Nothing like an opportunity.
Thank you, Jim.
Online.
What, online?
Shipped to your
That's
house.
right.
I'm just waiting for my agenda to load up, guys.
Go right then.
I'm just waiting for my agenda to load up. Okay.
And I'm not trying to play anybody's code, and I've never even mentioned this to anyone, so maybe I should.
Commissioner Gilman, you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Showing you good?
Austin?
Yeah.
Brian, good? Good?
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get this meeting started. Just a reminder to silence your mobile devices, please. All right. Today is March 18th, 2025. There's a quorum present. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is 10:04 a.m. Next on today's agenda is to convene as the Storey County Board of County Commissioners, bringing us to item number 3, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can all join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, on to item number 4 today is public comment. Public comment is welcome at the beginning and end of each meeting. These comments should be limited to matters not on today's calendar or agenda. Public comment is again welcomed after each item on the agenda, and those comments should be limited to the agendized topic. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per individual. With that, is there any public comment in the courtroom today? Not seeing any, we're going to move right along to item number 5, which is discussion for possible action. Consideration and possible approval of the agenda for March 18th, 2025. County Manager Osborne, are there any changes to today's agenda?
No changes, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments about the items on today's agenda?
No, thank you.
All right, Vice Chairman?
I'm good.
Okay, how about public comment? Is there any public comment about today's agenda? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve today's agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. On to item number 6. This is also discussion for possible action. Consideration and possible approval of the minutes from the February 18th, 2025 meeting. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments about those minutes?
No, thank you.
Vice Chairman?
No, thanks.
About public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from our February 18th, 2025 meeting as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. On to item number 7 is today's consent agenda. Commissioner Gilman, any questions or comments about the consent agenda?
No, thank you.
All right, Vice Chairman.
I'm good, thanks.
How about public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
I move to approve today's consent agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. On to item number 8, this discussion only, no action, no public comment will be taken. These are committee and staff reports, and we'll kick things off with the Sheriff's Office. Thank you, Sheriff. How about the Fire Protection District?
Nothing today, Commissioner.
Thank you. Public Works?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Northland, Operations Projects, reporting for Director Wiersbicki. He had just one item to update the board today. It was Road Rehab 2025 is out to bid. And that's all I have, sirs.
Thank you, Mike. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments for Mike?
No, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Moving right along to Operations and Projects Coordinator.
I
That
have
is
nothing
you.
today. I've got 2 more agenda items coming up.
Great, thank you. How about our business development?
Sarah has a report today.
All right.
Okay, so Sarah starts for the record. So Congress approved a continuing resolution for fiscal year 2025, and so that means it will be in effect till September 30th. And so that eliminated our the Divide Water Main Replacement Project and the Mobile Emergency Operations Center. So those are no longer going to be awarded this fiscal year. I'm going to work on preparing to submit them for fiscal year 2026, and we'll have to have that to our Porter Group by end of April. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? All right, appreciate the update. How about our planning department?
Good morning, Kathy Campbell for the record. Tonight at the Mark Twain Community Center at 6, there's a Green Links West project with NV Energy that they're holding a community meeting. And then again tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Highlands Fire Station, they're having, I believe, a similar meeting there. This is in response with our discussions with them on the Green Links West project and wanting them to have some community input prior to starting their special use permit process. So they've taken this and they'll be running everything, but staff will be in attendance to hear any comments or answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, how about our administrative officer?
No update today.
Emergency management? How about the BCTC? Comptroller? You could have said no.
Jennifer McCain, Storey County Comptroller for the record. I just wanted to let everybody know that the first draft of the tentative budget is completed. You'll either be getting those in binder form or digital form, how the commissioners requested. We will present this discussion to you on the April 1st meeting. Yes, I kind of find that ironic. It will probably be one of the more lengthy presentations as we have several new items to discuss. And I do request that all the department heads attend so that if you have any specific questions on their budgets, that they would be available to answer questions. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? All right. How about Health and Community Services?
Nothing today, thank you.
Okay. Recorder's Office?
Nothing today, thank you.
IT?
Good morning, Commissioners. James Dean, Storey County IT Director. Got a couple of projects to update you on. The wireless access point for the Tesla charger upgrade in the courthouse parking lot has been installed and is functional. The Justice Court access control system should be completed today, so a significant security upgrade for the Justice Court on the other side of town. The wastewater tower fence has been completed, and Public Works custom fabricated a gate for me. Thank you, Mike and Jason, for that. So that site is a bit more secure. We won't have tourists climbing up on it and things like that. The fiber at Station 72 is live with AT&T, and the camera project for the HOA building was completed yesterday. And also during that project, we ran into some old aluminum wiring at the Fire Station 72, so we pulled new 200 amp copper to get rid of the power sags in that older building. And that's all I have today.
Thank you, James. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you.
All right, Vice Chairman. Thank you again, James. Appreciate all the work down at 72. HR Department? Community Development?
Good morning, Commissioners. Chairman, Pete Renault for the record. Last week I had two inspectors go to Sacramento for their seminars. They both passed. Code enforcement passed his zoning, and Dan Horton passed his commercial. So he can help out there in the industrial park. It's getting really busy. We also made a offer for another office staff, admin, to replace Krista. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, she can start. So that's all I got today.
Awesome. Thank you for the update, Pete. Great news on the inspectors. Commissioner Gilman, any questions or comments? All right, Vice Chairman? All right, appreciate it. How about public relations? All right. And no update from the Planning Commission? Lee?
No, thank you.
All right. How about our DA's office?
No update this morning.
Okay. County Manager?
Thank you, Commissioners. Austin Osborne for the record. I just wanted to let you know that I informed the Virginia City Tourism Commission Board of our status at Piper's Opera House with regard to the RFQ to go out to a 501c3. They're aware of this, and their team is working with Jennifer on the budget to make sure they're budgeted appropriately to run the facility for the next fiscal year until we're able to revisit that matter. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments for Austin? No, thank you. Mr. Chairman? Appreciate it. How about our Clerk Treasurer's office?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Jim Hindle, Clerk and Treasurer. Just want to remind everybody that the vehicle registration service window is open and operating. We've had a steady stream of people over the last week. Want to remind people that it is credit card only, and please come in with all the documents required in order to get your vehicle either retitled, re-registered, or renewed. Just have had a couple issues with people wanting us to provide documents, and we are really limited in what we can pull off the system. If you don't have the document for your title, it's tough to do that. But that service is open and running smoothly right now, so we want to remind people of that. Also, earlier this month, the final installment of property taxes was due. We've had good payment of that, but just want to remind people to get any delinquencies taken care of. We'll be working on closing those up in the next month and then running into tax calc, working with the assessor to make sure that we're getting the books closed, delinquency letters out, and trying to get those done prior to the close of the tax year.
Appreciate the update, Jim. Commissioner Gilman, any questions for Jim?
No, thank you.
All right, good. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to do an update that I did not call on today? All right, not seeing any. Appreciate all the updates from staff. And we will get right back to our next agenda item. We're at item number 9, which is board comment. I'll start at my far left. Commissioner Gilman, do you have anything for us today?
No, thank you.
All right, Vice Chairman?
No, thank you.
Okay. I've only got one item of business. It is that Ash Allen, Virginia City resident, passed away last week. He was a Vietnam veteran and apparently served in several movies with John Wayne, or in John Wayne movies. So if we can all just have a moment of silence for Ash, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10, this is discussion for possible action. Consideration and possible approval for the county manager to sign Exhibit A of the Talent Services Agreement with Act Talent for the revised funding amount of $186,000. County Manager.
Thank you, Commissioners. Austin Osborne for the record. The last commission meeting, you had signed or approved a contract with AC Talent to be a staffing agency to provide us some resources we need for project management with regard to the federal appropriations projects that are coming our way. Due to the abundance of grants that have been acquired by Laura and Sarah and their team, We need to bring on a few more people to be able to handle these projects during the duration of those projects, but not necessarily forever. So we want to go ahead and go with professional services for this, these basically quote-unquote employees until these projects go away, and then we would retract back down to our current regular staffing for project management. We reached out to some folks on there, and we believe that we had a targeted amount at $165,000 made. We had decided to take a little bit different approach, and the person that we reached out to is a little bit more experienced, has more background, and is a little more expensive. So we would like to bring this back to the board just to bump that up to the $185,000 that is listed in the agenda and approve that, and if you're good with it, we'll proceed forward. That's it.
All right, not to be specific, but the agenda says 186,000?
It does say 186,000, and I should have said 186,000.
We'll make sure to remember that during your next reviews. All right, thank you, Austin. Commissioner Gilman, did I cut you off?
Oh, no, I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments? No, you don't, thank you. All right, Vice Chairman?
No, I'm good.
Is there any public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
I am. I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve the county manager to sign Exhibit A of the AC Talent Services Agreement with AC Talent for the revised funding amount of $186,000.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you,
you.
Austin. Moving right along to item number 11, this is discussion for possible action, consideration and possible approval of the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 26 through 30.
Good morning, Jennifer McCain, Storey County Comptroller for the record. Presented to you in your packet was a CIP plan for 5 years, fiscal year 26 through fiscal year 30. Our team has met approximately every 3 to 4 weeks for the past several months. And while we're presenting to you a 5-year plan, please note that every year that is not in the budget is a constantly moving and changing, very fluid plan. So what I'd like to concentrate on, unless you have any specific questions on 27 through 30, is FY26 plan. This actual CIP, that is the way it's presented, was what was presumed to have happen for current projects as of 6/30/25. So when it is also presented to you in budget form, there may be additional changes as we move forward. In the plan that is presented to you, FY26 does have a few changes in it between when it was submitted and today, so I'll go through those with each section. The equipment total request in this CIP is $1,825,000. In that, Public Works is planning to receive 3 trucks, a loader, a dump truck, a grader, a grizzly, an electronic reader board, and 3 pickup trucks for a total of $1,480,000. The Sheriff's Department is represented here with 3 patrol vehicles to rotate out their older vehicles. We also have 2 items in a miscellaneous section. One is a county UTV and one is a community development pickup truck. With that community development truck brings our first change. After talking to Pete, they do not need this vehicle this year, so I was going to remove that. However, I've also gotten a request to add another commissioner vehicle, which is shared with all departments and funds within the county, and an additional senior center vehicle. I don't know if you want questions or comments on each section, or you just want me to keep going.
Just keep going for now.
Okay. Moving on to the project section of the FY26 CIP. This totals $19,815,000. This breakdown includes the fiber project in the Highlands, which is $4.6 million. Construction continuation from FY25. These are projects that were started and will continue as we get into FY26. Those projects total $6,965,000. New construction projects starting total $6,265,000, and new projects that will begin design and planning phase total $1,175,000. And then we have a few miscellaneous projects that don't quite fit any category, and that is $810,000. Of this plan, we have our current federal appropriation projects of Fairgrounds Senior Center, the Fire Station 71, and the Sheriff's Tri-Substation remodel. All of those projects are in some capacity started, whether it's currently in planning or in the middle of construction. I do have 3 rail projects that I would like approval to present to the V&T board. The way the process is that we come up with projects as Storey County that we want done for the rail within Storey County. I present them to you, my board, and then I present them to the V&T board. When I have approval from both boards, I put it in the budget. The V&T will then present their projects to their board and then come to Storey County Commission to seek approval for their projects. The 3 projects that we have going for FY26 is a ADA ramp for the Gold Hill Depot, starting a roofing project on the Virginia City Freight Depot, and a land survey for the Gold Hill Depot. These projects for FY26 total $1,820,000. It is important to note that the roofing project most likely will cross into FY27, and that's noted in the CIP and the outcome for the Gold Hill survey, as I think Lisa will talk about later, is possible purchase of property from the V&T, as well as figuring out where we can pave and get a better parking lot down there. The parking lot paving is also in FY27. The purchase of the property is a new item, so it is not represented in the CIP. Our roads total in the FY26 CIP is $4,940,571. This is directly related to a road CIP that Dow produced for the Public Works Department. However, in the Dow CIP, it was slated to have Cartwright completed, and we have decided as a committee that it was better to move forward with Mark Twain roads, as there's some drainage issues that will need to be taken care of as those roads are completed. So for the Mark Twain roads would be Sam Clemens, Sutro, and Territory. And then we have $115,000 in studies within the CIP. And water and sewer projects total $5,986,000. These include some grant projects, the Gold Hill Sewer Collection, which is a federal appropriation, and the lead siphon project, which is a principal forgiveness loan. Both of these projects will be ongoing and move into future fiscal years. We have other projects really shown in here. One is the Silver City Water Line, water plant valves, and a hillside to divide main project. That is the project that Sarah was discussing during her staff report. That was a federal appropriation approval for FY25 that has now been taken off the table, but we plan to apply for that again with our FY26 appropriations. Therefore, for FY26 in the CIP, we feel that it is important to leave the $75,000 noted for design, so that when we do submit this project, we can have a full project to present to them. It's important to note as always, within water and sewer, that we use the infrastructure fund to pay for anything that is not a grant or a loan. Water and sewer, although their fund balances are growing, they do not have the wherewithal to complete these projects on their own. Should any of these projects, such as the Hillside and Divide main water line, not get a federal appropriation, we would have to find alternative financing, whether we go outside or Storey County General Fund loans the water fund money. That will have to be discussed. So that's all I have, but I'm happy to answer any particular questions that you may have on this plan.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I got a quick question. In this, I've seen a couple of areas where flood mitigation is budgeted for specific areas. But I just want to make sure that we have something in there for the Mark Twain community that is budgeted for, or are we doing flood mitigation in that area of the county?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the location you were talking about.
For the Mark Twain area.
So the Mark Twain area is slated to have 3 of their roads done, and the drainage portion of the project will be done before the asphalt is laid down.
Okay, so it's part of the road construction or road repair?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner, Vice Chairman Mitchell, do you have any questions?
I do, and I just actually to follow on to that, I think I saw in a later year a pretty significant flood project for Mark Twain.
Oh, did you? Okay.
2028, I think it says something.
So if I may, the drainage plan for the drainage project in Mark Twain is not 100% completed. However, the reason we're putting approximately 1.6 million into that drainage project and getting those plans done for the 3 roads that I mentioned and the intersections going to different roads. So when we get to FY28, we don't have to dig up the new asphalt to move forward.
Yeah, and that 2028 is a much larger.
Yes.
12 million is what's placeholding it right now.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good call out. Jennifer, the only thing that really jumped out to me, and I'm hoping that we can just maybe do a triple check on it, is the cost on the vehicle barn for getting the fire apparatus out of the Mark Twain Community Center. I know that construction prices have gone up. I'm hearing even from other government agencies that it seems higher than what we should be paying, and so I'm not questioning it necessarily. I'm just hoping that we can make absolutely sure that there's not a way to get there without spending $3.5 million.
So with that project, we had initially budgeted, and it is in here at $3.5 million after going over some plans with Mike Northern, and if he wants to speak more to this, we've trimmed this down to basically just being an extremely large garage, and we're waiting on a new quote on that. So my hope is that when I present the final tentative budget to you, we will have that new quote.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
And Jennifer, to Austin Osborne for the record, on that center, it's right now over 3. You anticipate that's going to be closer to 1, right? By the time we go through and restructure the design of that building to be really what it is. It's just a fire apparatus bay and nothing more. And I defer to Mike too if he wants to talk about that. I think it's an important question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Mike Northen, Operations Projects. What's driving the cost on that particular building isn't the building itself, it's the site we're working with. We've got we build the pad up considerably. We've got a lot of earthwork going on in there. We have, it's currently served by a well. It's not going to support fire sprinklers. We're looking at, potential addition, fixtures at some point. For right now, we've pared the building down to literally just a tin can with a small heater that keeps it above freezing. So we're trying to take costs out of there, but a lot of this is site driven, not just the facility. But yeah, I directed the designers to reassess their engineer's estimate of construction costs, and we'll have that, I'm hoping, this week.
Very good, thank you.
All right. I don't think there are any other questions. That's the end of it for you? No other?
Yes.
Anything else? Okay. Is there a motion? there any public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
I am. I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve the capital improvement plan for fiscal years 26 through 30 as presented.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 12, the discussion for possible action, consideration and possible approval to continue ongoing discussions and research between Storey County and B&T Railway Commission for the potential acquisition of APN 002-063-22 and 002-63-24 and surrounding vacant properties in Gold Hill, Nevada. Lisa?
Good morning, Lisa Massell, Storey County Administration Officer for the record. So on February 26th, I went down with Sarah Sturts, Kathy Canfield, and met with the V&T Railway Commission regarding these two parcels. Both of them are 0.13 acres. We discussed the potential for Storey County to possibly acquire these parcels to satisfy a land and water conservation fund grant issue. So basically what happened was a grant was issued in 2016 for playground equipment at Miners Park, and one of the requirements was to maintain that area, that park, as outdoor recreation. However, Community Chest, the library was built, and so now we're required to do a land conversion to satisfy the requirements of that grant. So we started looking at different areas, and the area around the Gold Hill property seems to meet the requirements of this grant. When we met with V&T Railway Commission, they were very optimistic, they were very positive, and they wanted us to continue these conversations more about Storey County possibly getting this property to be able to use it for outdoor recreation for the community that lives there in the Gold Hill area, and as well as people passing through, but also to be able to use it for multiple events that could take place at this property. However, there's about 5 additional properties around these two parcels that would be of benefit to Storey County to also make into a park. And so what I am asking today is for the Board of County Commissioners and, you know, anybody who has any other advice to allow us to go through and keep this conversation ongoing with the V&T Railway Commission, look at getting appraisals and some market analysis to determine what this property would be worth. I do have one correction. I don't think we're ready to request a survey at this point in time, and that should have been taken out. But just to do the appraisals, not to exceed $10,000 at this point, and just to allow us to reach out to the rest of the property owners in the surrounding areas to see if they have any interest in allowing Storey County to look into acquiring those parcels as well. That's all I have. If there's any other questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Vice Chairman?
I guess my only question would be kind of on perceived timeline. Like, as you know, we're in budget cycle right now. We have kind of a complex system when there are things that have to deal with potentially using rail funds, and if that's foreseen as one way to acquire these lots, that kind of has to go back and forth between the two bodies and that. And so I'm just wondering if that's something that we should anticipate needing to look at. Should we approve this motion for this coming fiscal year, or do you see it potentially pushing out past that where we don't need to deal with it this budget cycle?
I do, well, and Jennifer could probably assist on that as well, answering that, but I don't see this being finalized this year, possibly the 2 appraisals, but that would be about it at this point in time for this current fiscal year.
Okay. And sorry, I should have been more clear. When I say this year, I'm talking about the upcoming year.
Upcoming.
That we're trying to budget for.
Upcoming fiscal year. I think it depends on how fast we could get a survey done, how fast we could get the appraisals done, and what kind of feedback we could get from the surrounding parcel owners, but I do see this potentially going into the following fiscal year as well.
Okay. And I just, you know, with the timeline, I'm okay with that. I just, if there is a chance we may want to move it in the 26 fiscal year, I'm wondering if what we're being asked to do today is sufficient to get it into a budget, if that's something we need to do, or if it'll need to come back.
Jennifer McCain for the record. At this point in time, I don't feel that there's sufficient information to put it into the budget. If we intend to purchase this during FY26, then I would need at least very rough estimates to put it in both the V&T budget and the Storey County Rail Fund budget. I'm not comfortable with just throwing a dart at the wall and pulling a number out myself, so if we can do some, you can direct us to do some other research so that this may be in the budget, it would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm not particularly in a rush. I just trying to make sure we don't get held up by something we didn't intend to do or intended to do but didn't get done. Thank you. That's my question.
All right. I don't have any questions for you at this time. Is there any public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll be happy to make a motion, and I just want to comment that, you know, I think that looking into the feasibility of combining some parcels down there around the depot makes a lot of sense, so that it's more usable and less fragmented, and I think that would be nice for the Gulfville community. So with that, I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve Storey County to continue to work with the V&T Railway Commission to determine if there is interest from other property owners in allowing Storey County the opportunity to purchase adjacent vacant properties and in obtaining competitive market analysis. I'm going to leave surveys in. Surveys and appraisals as necessary at a cost not to exceed $10,000 to satisfy a land conversion issue related to a Land and Water Conservation Fund, or LWCF, grant received by the county in 2016 in accordance with CFR 36, Chapter I, Part 39, and the National Park Service Land and Water Conservation Fund utilized to replace park equipment at Miners Park.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Lisa. On to item number 13, this discussion for possible action. Consideration and possible approval of special use permit 2025-018. The applicant requests a special use permit to allow for greater than 4 large domestic animals to reside at the estate zone property. The applicants propose to have a variety of bovine, swine, and goats residing on the property, which also includes a single-family residence where the applicant lives. Kathy?
Thank you. So this special use permit request was heard at our March 6th Planning Commission meeting. And thank you to Sheriff Cullen and County Manager Osborne for attending. We had a very robust discussion about animals and the properties that were there. So the applicant is requesting to have more than the 4 large domestic animals that are permitted per parcel in the Mark Twain Estates zoning district. When staff was going through and looking at this, we had come up with, because the site that she has is larger than the 1 acre zoning, she has 3.69, I believe, acres. We were looking at doing the ratios of 4 animals per 1 acre that you would come up with 14, being the same ratio for the amount of area that you had. That's not exactly what our code says. Our code says 4 per parcel. So a parcel could be 10 acres, a parcel could be 1 acre, and you would still get that 4 allowable number. So that was what our planning commission was looking at, is what is that appropriate number? Should it be more than 4 or not? So we had like I said, a long discussion, and there were a lot of neighbors that were happy that came in attendance that voiced their opinions on their concerns with the more numbers, and there was also people that were there in support of the property owner being able to add these animals to the site. Ultimately, the Planning Commission voted 6-1 to allow for more than the 4 animals. We did adjust some of the items that were from the original approval, and the recommended conditions of approval that you have before you have those adjustments. So the one things that they did adjust was that the number still be 14, but that needs to include any of the baby animals that would be there. Typically, when we were looking at our code, it doesn't say anything about baby animals for the large domestic animals, but for dogs, it does say any puppies or anything below 12 weeks don't count in the number. So this was something our planning commission said, well, as long as you're at 14 and including any of the babies and stuff that you have, they were comfortable with that. They also wanted to make sure like the fencing was, the fencing for the site had been reinforced. There had been some issues originally when some of the animals were put there that some of the fencing really wasn't made to hold up to, for the animals that were being there. We also had discussions about the disposal because the applicant proposes to use this as a regenerative farm animals. And so there is slaughtering that occurs now and then, and that any of that material that's not used by the applicant is disposed of properly. The neighbors were concerned that those animals would attract additional coyotes and mountain lions that are already down in that neighborhood, but they didn't want to have an attractive nuisance for those animals. So we've included that into the recommended conditions. Besides that, the applicant is also here. We did notice adjacent property owners. So like I said, we did get several letters, emails in support of the project, and we did get an email that was against the project or had concerns about the project. And then we did have the concerns that the people were raising were just, like I had said, like the attractive nuisance of the coyotes and other animals that are out there. And the total number. So the applicant's here to answer any questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions too.
Thank you, Kathy. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, actually both. Kathy, who oversees this to make sure that this applicant is doing what is in this and the requirements in the special use permit?
So what would happen if there was a neighbor had a complaint saying, we think there's 50 goats out there or whatever it might be. Our nuisance officer would go out there to look at the property. They would have the special use permit conditions, and if there was a concern or a question that something was happening, they would let the planning department know. They'd probably let us know anyway, but they would let the planning department know. And if something was in violation of the special use permit, we can always bring that back to the planning commission and then have the planning commission make a recommendation on if they think this special use permit should be revoked because the applicant's not following the conditions of the special use permit.
Is this a renewable special use permit?
No, and actually, I'm sorry, I'm glad you brought that up. The one other thing that they wanted to add was that after 1 year, we would come back and do a review of the special use permit to see how it's worked for the last year. And then at that time, we would determine if we wanted to continue that for the next year or if it was something that they felt that condition, that there weren't any issues any longer. So right now, it's set up that next April-ish timeframe, we would come back to the planning commission, have a public meeting about that to see if there's been any concerns or anything that has happened with this use for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chairman, any questions, comments?
I actually have a couple of questions for the applicant, if that's all right. My first question is just if the proposed restrictions on the number of animals that are in the staff report allows you to do what you're envisioning as far as kind of sustainability and living off of your land.
Yes, it does. Tia Temple, Storey County resident. It does. The 4 that were initially in the planning from Mark Twain did not allow for sustainability. Goats and sheep actually, for many farmers, don't qualify as large-scale animals, but the way that the goats season and cycle and reproduce, it's only once a year. They drop 2, sometimes 1, so there wouldn't be a viable cycle of meat and process, not to mention cheese, milk, or fiber.
Okay. Any concerns about including in the maximum number, the limitation, including babies in that number? And I'm just,
that was actually my request at the meeting, is that we could include them into the number.
Okay.
It's very common for small-scale farmers to become overwhelmed, that all of a sudden, you know, they only wanted 7 and now they have 30. It's incredibly common. It's hard on the budget, but it's also hard on the farmer. So by keeping the amount of young included in the total limited number, that helps to keep me personally in check to make sure I stay on schedule.
Very good. Thank you. Those are my only questions at this point.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before I go to public comment?
No.
Sounds good. Is there any public comment? Now's your time to get all the animal breeding information you wanted from
Or slaughtering information.
Yeah.
Hide tanning.
The whole 9 yards. All right, not seeing any public comment. You gentlemen ready to vote on this? Okay, Vice Chairman, you prepared?
I am, and I think actually it's a good point, and maybe at some point in the future, it makes sense for us to look at our zoning and see if there's a delineation between what I would consider medium-sized animals versus, I mean, horses, cows, llamas. I know pigs can get big, so maybe they fall on one side or the other of the line, but maybe there's value in us delineating between mediums, because right now it's just big animals, small animals, but maybe there's something in between that's a bit more permissive than the large animal rules.
I did have one more comment, if I may.
Yeah, just your name for the record again, if you don't mind.
And Tia Temple. One thing about regenerative farming is that the panels in the corrals will move from space to space, and as the animals move, it deposits more bioorganic material into the ground, and it helps reseed the ground. As the ground recedes, it holds more moisture. It will choke out some of the tumbleweeds, but not all of them, and it helps with water management so we don't have as much runoff flooding through the neighborhood, and it also helps with fire control because anything that grows in place of the tumbleweeds is more fire resistant because it's absorbing the water that's going around it. So there's 2 more reasons why you should say yes.
Thank you.
All right, do we have to do findings?
Oh, yeah,
anything
Kathy,
like
you
that?
ready for the findings?
Sure.
So the findings of fact for a motion of approval. This approval is to allow for greater than 4 large domestic animals to reside at the estate's zoned property. The applicants propose to have a variety of bovine, swine, and goats residing on the property, which also includes a single-family residence where the applicant lives. The property is approximately 3.69 acres in size and is located at 848 Sutro Springs Road, Mark Twain Estates, neighborhood of Storey County, Nevada, assessor's parcel number APN 003-293-32. The proposed project complies with the general purpose, goals, objectives, and standards of the county master plan, this title, and any other plan, program, map, or ordinance adopted or under consideration pursuant to official notice by the county. The proposal location, size, height, operations, and other significant features will be compatible with and will not cause substantial negative impact on adjacent lands, uses, or will perform a function or provide a service that is essential to the surrounding land uses, community, and neighborhood. The proposed project will result in no substantial or undue adverse effect on adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, public improvements, public sites or right-of-way, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, and general welfare, either as they now exist or as they may in the future be developed as a result of the implementation of the provisions and policies of the county master plan, this title and any other plans, program, map, or ordinance adopted or under consideration pursuant to an official notice by the county or other governmental agency having jurisdiction to guide growth and development. The proposed use in the proposed area will be adequately served by and will impose no undue burden on any of the improvements, facilities, utilities, or services provided by the county or other governmental agency having jurisdiction in the county. Special use permit conforms to the 2024 Storey County Master Plan for the Mark Twain Flowery Range area in which the property is located. A discussion supporting this finding is provided in section 2.d of the staff report, and the contents thereof are cited in an approval of this special use permit. The conditions under the special use permit do not conflict with the minimum requirements in Storey County Code section 17.03.150 special use permit and section 17.40 E estate zone. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Very good. In accordance with the recommendation by the Planning Commission and staff, the findings under section 3A of the staff report and as read into the record by county staff and in compliance with all conditions of approval, I, Commissioner Mitchell, hereby move to approve a special use permit to allow for greater than 4 large domestic animals to reside at the estate's zoned property. The applicant's property to have a variety of bovine, swine, and goats residing on the property, which also includes a single-family resident where the applicant lives. The property is approximately 3.69 acres in size and is located at 848 Sutro Springs Road, Mark Twain Estates, neighborhood of Storey County, Nevada, assessor's parcel number APN 003-293-32.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Tia. Congratulations. And we are going to move right on to item number 14, discussion for possible action, consideration and possible approval of special use permit 2025-021. The applicant requests a special use permit to construct a freestanding changeable message sign at the Mark Twain Community Center. The proposed sign is approximately 9 feet by 8 feet, 9 feet wide by 8 feet tall, and portion of the sign will contain a changeable message. Kathy?
Thank you. So at the March 6th Planning Commission meeting, we did discuss the proposed changeable message sign with the community. At that meeting, we were looking for not only a recommendation from the Planning Commission to install the sign, but also we're taking comments from the residents on their thoughts on the proposed sign and what they were wanting to see. Our Public Works Department has been in contact with a sign maker, and they gave us some initial ideas of what a sign could look like, and some of those are attached in your in the staff report. The residents at the meeting didn't select any of the additional ones. They didn't go through and say, I wanted option 4 or anything like that. But we did talk about where the location for the sign should go. Originally, when we were down there, we were thinking it should go right by the mailbox and this sign that's kind of right in the middle. And then as we actually went out and measured and did some stuff, realized that that's really not a good spot to put this because cars would be hitting it and it would be in the way. The residents preferred the location that would be right at the county boundary, the street and the county boundary. There is an older sign that's there that had some letters that you could go out and put up there. I don't think that's been used very much in the recent past. But they did like that location. We had another site that was closer to the driveway near the actual park. But they all seem to agree that they like the county line area better. And staff, we've been out there to look at it, and we think that that site works. That site would be fine, and it would be less of a impact to drivers trying to come in and out of the driveways. So that was one of the things they did. We had one person that brought up the idea of could the sign be solar or solar powered. We agreed to that we would ask the sign maker about that and see what that would be, what kind of costs would be associated, what kind of material and equipment would be needed for a sign that size, and because of the changeable message, it might require a little bit more energy than just a blinking light or something that's typically on those. But we agreed to go and find out from them what they might be interested in. There is power and internet connection available from the Mark Twain Community Center, and so it would be a simple trenching through the parking lot to add power to the sign too. So even though the Planning Commission didn't require that the sign be solar. They just wanted us to look at that and left that up to our discretion on what was appropriate or not. The other item that they had a concern about was the brightness. And so we said we would also work with the sign maker to make sure that the sign that we select has alternatives to the brightness of the bulbs, and that once it was installed, we could work with the community on trying to find the right level. It might be maybe during the winter months it wants to be less, and during summer, you know, depending on the sunlight and things like that. But we would experiment with the different brightness. Nobody wants this to be something that's bright that you see from Highway 50. I mean, we want it subtle, but we also wanted it to be something that definitely is readable for everybody. The other topic that came up was if this was going to be on all the time or not. We said staff would be looking at that and also trying to figure out what the best timing would be. There's pros and cons to having it on all the time. People have different schedules, and you do see different things. There was also things, if it turned off, but if there was an emergency, 6 Mile Canyon's closed, or there might be some information that we do want to relay that's important, maybe it would be on. So I think it just kind of comes down to what that level of brightness is and what the messaging would be. The messages would not be commercial. It would just be the county would control that. So it's not going to be like buy Pepsi Cola or whatever. It's going to be, you know, public meeting tonight, or, you know, flu shots available, or whatever it might be. We would control that signage, and we would do that remotely. So this isn't a burden on anybody that's at the actual community center. We can do that remotely from here, and again, like if it's an emergency, dispatch or however, we'll work with emergency management on how to put that signage up there. One resident did ask about landscaping, putting some landscaping adjacent to the sign. I've talked to Public Works about that too. The issue with that is not necessarily that there's any concern with having landscaping there. It's just who's maintaining it, how are we watering it, what kind of landscaping are we putting. Putting the landscaping, it might be something that it's not associated with the sign immediately, but that could be something when we clear out some of the sagebrush that's there. You know, maybe there's some opportunities to do stuff, and staff was willing to look into that and talk to Public Works about how that could fit into their programming that they have for down there. So after all that discussion, the Planning Commission agreed for a recommendation of approval for the sign. So, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
No, you answered most of the questions I had, so thank you.
All right. Vice Chairman?
Yeah, you know, I think it certainly does warrant looking into solar. I mean, when you think about trenching and repairing the parking lot, and if there is an alternative that's reliable, workable, that has enough storage to run through the night if we needed to or whatever, that, you know, and maybe wirelessly connecting to the internet if there's a way to do that. It seems like that may be worth looking at. But I appreciate you bringing this to us. Thank you.
All right. Is there any public comment? Not seeing any. Kathy, you prepared with findings?
Yes. Okay, so the findings of fact for a motion of approval. Let me get my... This approval is for a special use permit to construct a freestanding changeable message sign at the Mark Twain Community Center property. The proposed sign is approximately 9 feet wide by 8 feet tall, and a portion of the sign will contain a changeable message. The property is located at 500 Sam Clemens Avenue, Storey County, Nevada. Assessor's parcel number APN 003-273-13. The proposed project complies with the general purpose, goals, objectives, and standards of the county master plan, this title, and any other plan, program, map, or ordinance adopted or under consideration pursuant to official notice by the county. The proposal location, size, height, operations, and other significant features will be compatible with and will not cause substantial negative impact on adjacent land uses or will perform a function or provide a service that is essential to the surrounding land uses, community, and neighborhood. The proposed project will result in no substantial or adverse or undue adverse effect on adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, public improvements, public sites or right-of-way, or other matters affecting the public health, safety, and general welfare, either as they now exist or as they may in the future be developed as a result of the implementation of the provisions and policies of the county master plan, this title, and any other plans, program, map, or ordinance adopted or under consideration pursuant to an official notice by the county or other governmental agency having jurisdiction to guide growth and development. The proposed, the proposed use in the proposed area will be adequately served by and will impose no undue burden on any of the improvements, facilities, utilities, or services provided by the county or other governmental agency having jurisdiction in the county. The special use permit conforms to the 2024 Storey County Master Plan for the Mark Twain Flowery Range planning area in which the subject property is located. A discussion supporting this finding is provided in Section 2C of this staff report. And the contents thereof are cited in an approval of the special use permit. The conditions under the special use permit do not conflict with the minimum requirements in Storey County Code Section 17.03.150 special use permit and 17.84 signs and billboards. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
I am. In accordance with the recommendation by the Planning Commission and staff, the findings of fact under Section 3A of this report and read into the record by Storey County staff, and the other findings deemed appropriate by the Planning Commission and in compliance with the discussion items listed under Planning Commission headings starting on page 1 of this staff report, and in compliance with the conditions of approval, I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve a special use permit to construct a freestanding changeable message sign at the Mark Twain Community Center property. The proposed sign is approximately 9 feet wide by 8 feet tall, and portions of the sign will contain a changeable message. The property is located at 500 Sam Clemens Avenue, Storey County, Nevada, Assessor's Parcel Number 003-273-13.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Kathy. On to item number 15, which is discussion for possible action. Consideration and possible approval of a quitclaim deed to transfer ownership of the parcel of land associated with the Community Chest Community Center from Storey County to Community Chest. This parcel is located at Miners Park, and a recent parcel map created the parcel of land associated with the Community Chest building. Kathy?
Yes, so this is the proposal to transfer the ownership of the parcel that we created at the Miners Park parcel to the Community Chest. This would give the property that contains their building on it to Community Chest, and we are reserving a 9-foot access easement which would be along the new west property line so that Public Works could have some access to get in case there's a little retaining wall that's there and there's pool functions and things. So that gives them a little bit of room to work on any issues that might arise in the future there.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not, thank you.
Ms. Sherman?
I'm good, thanks.
All right, is there any public comment? Not seeing any. There's no findings on this, right, Kathy?
No.
Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
I am. I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve a quitclaim deed to transfer ownership of the parcel of land associated with the Community Chest Community Center from Storey County to Community Chest. This parcel is located at Miners Park, and a recent parcel map created the parcel of land associated with the Community Chest building. This document also includes a reservation of an access easement to Storey County for the purpose of allowing maintenance activities associated with Miners Park, and more particularly an existing retaining wall that abuts the property line.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Kathy. All right, on to item number 16 is to recess to convene as the Storey County Fire Protection District Board, bringing us to item number 17, which is our consent agenda. Fire Commissioner Gilman, questions or comments about the consent agenda?
No, thank you.
Fire Commissioner Mitchell?
I'm good, thanks.
Is there any public comment regarding the consent agenda? Not seeing any. Fire Commissioner Mitchell, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I, Fire Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve to send $176,929.54 of outstanding unpaid ambulance bills to collections and write off the amount of $2101.98.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. On to item number 18, which is discussion for possible action. Presentation, public workshop, discussion and consideration directing staff regarding the updates to the Storey County Fire Protection District capital and staffing improvement plan for fiscal year 2025 through 2030.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jim Morgan, Assistant Fire Chief for the record. Just some key updates to the CIP that we previously presented. One of the very first things was the removal of the separate mechanic shop with the purchase of the new Station 75 on Italy. So it's no longer necessary for us to do that. So we're going to go ahead and cancel that. The second thing would be funding considerations for the build out at Station 71. We put aside $8 million as a placeholder for that. Unlikely we'll get it done in the fiscal year. It's possible. That's just the major change to that. Third, there would be additional funding for SCBA replacements and a compressor, our self-contained breathing apparatus. As those costs rise, we chase them down and adjust to those accordingly. The next one would be our training property alignment. We had it in our possession for quite some time, and it's going to come in under budget, so we'll have that money to put back into the fund as well. And lastly, our staffing considerations. We met with the county staff to discuss the finance officer position in great detail, and our recommendation is to keep the position in the CIP on the budget, but not fill it until it's approved at a proper time. Looking at specifically software implementation with the Tyler software is about 8 months. We're going to want to align that with the comptroller for budget alignment and get all the bank accounts and financial structure changes completed and overall department transition planning so we have a smooth, seamless transfer of the finance officer. And those are basically the changes and updates for our CIP.
All right, thank you, sir. Fire Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not, thank you.
Fire Commissioner Mitchell?
I don't either.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Not seeing any. Fire Commissioner Mitchell, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah. I, Fire Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve the presented SCFPD 2025 through 2030 capital and staffing improvement plan.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. On to item number 19, discussion for possible action. Discussion and possible approval to sign a purchase agreement for a Skeeter Ford F550 Type 5 Quick Attack Fire Engine that is entirely funded by Switch in the amount of $355,271.
Again, Jim Morgan, Assistant Fire Chief for the record. A generous donation by Switch, fulfilling our needs out at TRI Park, helping us combat the lithium fires. This unit will have the ability to do quick attacks, as well as supply a significant amount of F500 or encapsulating foam to help extinguish those fires. Currently what we're doing is we're bringing a lot of 5-gallon jugs with us and going back and getting more. And this will have the ability for us to get it there much quicker and accommodate our needs a lot better for lithium-based fires.
All right, thank you. Fire Commissioner Gilman, questions, comments?
None, thank you.
Fire Commissioner Mitchell?
No, I just want to recognize Switch. I think that's fantastic that they're willing to help us with this specific need that we have out there.
Indeed. Is there any public comment? Not seeing any. Fire Commissioner Mitchell, you prepared to make a motion?
I, Fire Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve the purchase of a Skeeter Ford F550 Type 5 Quick Attack Fire Engine with a 100% reimbursement from Switch, Inc. The Storey County Fire Protection District will receive payment from Switch, Inc. before signing a purchase contract.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Item number 20, discussion for possible action. Discussion and possible approval of the purchase of an unbudgeted emergency generator for Fire Station 72 for the approximate amount of $40,000 from Highlands Electric.
Jim Morgan, Assistant Fire Chief for the record. A very good deal for us at the fire district, looking at powering the entire complex out there with one generator. Currently, the house is not powered by the generator. We're running extension cords to meet that need. So we came across this deal, honestly, with Highland Electric. They had one, and it suits our needs, and we're looking for permission to buy this unbudgeted item and move forward.
All right, thank you, Jim. Fire Commissioner Gilman, questions, comments?
No, thank you.
Fire Commissioner Mitchell?
I just want to hear if the comptroller has heartburn about this.
Comptroller says no.
He says no. I could have mentioned that, I'm sorry.
How about any public comment? Not seeing any. Fire Commissioner Mitchell, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I, Fire Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve the purchase of an unbudgeted emergency generator for Fire Station 72 for the approximate amount of $40,000 from Highlands Electric.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Jim. All right, on to item number 21 is to recess to convene as the Storey County Liquor Licensing Board. Bringing us to item number 22, which is discussion for possible action for consideration and possible approval of the first reading for the on-sale liquor license. The applicant is Jennifer Stoops, Maddie's Place LLC at 55 North C Street, Virginia City, Nevada.
Frank Valdez, for the record, excuse me. After conducting an extensive background investigation on the applicant, I found no red flags or disqualifiers. Unless there are any questions, I don't have any further information.
Great. Commissioner Gilman, any questions or comments?
None, thank you.
Vice Chairman Mitchell?
I'm good.
Sure.
Nothing.
All right. Public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman.
Booze Commissioner.
Dude. Just threw me for a loop again.
Sorry.
Vice Chairman Mitchell, are you prepared to make a motion?
Yes. I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve the first reading for on-sale liquor license. The applicant is Jennifer Stoops, Maddie's Place LLC at 55 North C Street, Virginia City, Nevada.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. To item number 23, recess to reconvene as the Storey County Board of County Commissioners. Bringing us to item number 24. Consideration and possible approval to authorize the county manager to authorize a change request in the amount of $55,096.56, due to a design oversight in the plans for the site improvements at the Lockwood Senior Center. The original design undersized the required retaining wall at the south end of the parking lot. Corrective design was provided by the designers at no cost to the county, and the contractor has submitted a price proposal to construct the larger wall per corrected designs. Construction management has reviewed the proposed costs and determined the costs to be reasonable. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Northen, Operations Projects. The original civil design drawings for the Lockwood Senior Center site showed a retaining wall at the southwest corner of the parking lot to retain the existing hillside that the lot extends into. It was during construction, contractor expressed some concerns about the adequacy of the wall in terms of its height and length. This was the subject of an RFI to the designers, it was Loomis and Associates. Loomis responded in agreement with the concerns, provided revised drawings showing a substantially larger wall. The contractor was asked to provide a hard quote for the additional wall construction, and that's the subject of this change request. The wall, unfortunately, is not a luxury item. This wall is required to protect the parking area of the facility, which is sized for the occupant load of the building. Had the oversight, of course, not occurred, larger wall costs would have been captured in the original submitted bid. And I have to point out one more thing. The board will notice that the dollar amount in the item title is $55,096.56. We missed a line item in there. There's a 1% bond fee that the contractor is entitled to. amounting to about $524.73. So the actual correct amount is $55,621.29. And I've updated the documentation to reflect that, and that's what you have in front of you. And I do have extra copies at the back if anyone's interested. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Mike. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
Mike, this wall, it's just a thicker wall. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, they had designed a wall, and the contractor got out there and started excavating and laying it out. And it was very clear it was not going to be tall enough because we have a vertical cut of some 7.5, 8 feet, and they'd only spec like 6 feet. And then we have a large surcharge above it because it's a steep slope going up from there. They were cautious, contacted the designers, and the designers came out and said, oh my gosh, yeah, that's not going to work. So revised the drawings. And so because the wall is taller, there's additional concrete, more CMU block, and of course larger steel. And there's additional steps in the wall, and where the steps occur, you have double bars. You've seen this. So that's what happened. The wall is a little over twice as big as it was. And in that packet, you'll see a cost analysis that was performed by CME, showing the additional bar, additional concrete.
Yeah, it makes sense. The big item was the trusses, and I was just curious about that. But if the wall's taller, obviously, to the pitch for the roof and all, they got to redo all the trusses and everything.
This is just a retaining wall at the back of the parking lot, because we had to push back in there to get enough spaces to serve the occupant load of the building. Yes, sir.
All right, Vice Chairman, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay, how about public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve the change request, CR 008, and to authorize the county manager to authorize the change request in the amount of $55,621.29 for the construction of a retaining wall per the corrected design documents.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you,
Mike.
sirs.
On to item number 25, this is discussion for possible action. Consideration and possible approval to accept a contract for the remodel of the restrooms at the Virginia City Senior Center, bringing them into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act from Shakespeare Unlimited Construction in an amount of $77,553 with a 10% contingency for a total not to exceed $85,308.30. This project is partially funded by a grant from the Aging and Disability Services Division, ARPA, in the amount of $45,000. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike North on Operations Projects. This work is to update the restrooms at the Virginia City Senior Center, make them ADA accessible. This facility serves primarily a senior population, so this effort is going to make the restrooms easier to access and use for persons with mobility or other disabilities. The particular scope of work and finishes was determined by coordination between Director York, myself, and some consultants. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Commissioner Gilman, do you have any questions or comments?
None, thank you.
Vice Chairman?
Thank you.
Okay. How about public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to accept the contract for the remodel of the restrooms at the Virginia City Senior Center to bring them into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act from Shakespeare Unlimited Construction in an amount of $77,553 with a 10% contingency for a total not to exceed $85,308.30. This project is partially funded by a grant from Aging and Disability Services Division, ARPA, in the amount of $45,000.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Commissioners.
On to item number 26, discussion for possible action. Discussion and possible consideration approving the county manager to approve and sign a contract with RCG Economics to provide economic and fiscal advice and review to Storey County on an on-call basis as related to government and regional affairs and legislative matters for the 2025 general and interim legislative session not to exceed $100,000. Austin?
All right, thank you. Austin Osborne for the record, County Manager. What we have here is a budgeted expense. I had put in the county manager's office budget $100,000 to, as necessary, retain RCG Economics to perform fiscal reviews as necessary of bills that might be affecting the county or issues regarding potential coming after the county's fund balances and those sorts of matters, as well as a second part would be to conduct projects for the county on an as-needed basis, such as to update the regional fiscal report that we're so familiar with. It's possible that none of this money will be needed. It's possible that all of it will be needed. It depends on what happens down at the legislature and otherwise until the session is over. So that's what I'm requesting. I anticipate the contract is split about 50-50 for projects and for on-call review as needed. It is a budgeted expense.
All right, thank you, Austin. Commissioner Gilman, questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Vice Chairman?
No, thanks.
How about public comment? Not seeing any. Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to approve the county manager to approve and sign a contract with RCG Economics to provide economic and fiscal advice and review to Storey County on an on-call basis as related to government and regional affairs and legislative matters for the 2025 general and interim legislative session, not to exceed $100,000.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 27, discussion for possible action. Do you want to take this, or are you good? Sure.
You can introduce it and then I'll,
Okay.
yeah.
Discussion and consideration directing county staff to draft regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units in all residential, commercial, residential, estate, and planned unit development zones, except where prohibited by existing HOA regulations in Storey County, including conducting countywide public surveys, scoping, and community workshops seeking further direction from the board and planning commission, and including sufficient funds in the fiscal year 26 county budget to complete necessary drafting of and consultation for associated regulations and codes. This item is per the request of Commissioner Mitchell. Austin?
Okay, Austin Osborne for the record. I can defer this directly to Commissioner Mitchell per his request if you like.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and that's exactly the wording that I used when I requested this item, just to trip you up,
Yeah,
Chairman. So,
beautiful. I vote nay.
No, absolutely no embellishment by staff. So, the reason I requested this item was to give us an opportunity to direct staff to look at potentially expanding out our current situation with accessory dwelling units. So the way that our zoning currently sits, we allow accessory dwelling units, and I'm sure Austin will correct me, but as a general rule, they are allowed with, if the person that's going to be living there is related to you, with a certain degree of consanguinity is the formal term for that. And there may be some limited zoning areas where they are allowed with a special use permit. I don't know if that allows for them not to be related to you or not. And as we talk about our housing situation and how open we are, and we have really deregulated a lot of things, this is one that sticks out to me, that as long as we have that limitation in there that only someone related to you can live in the ADU or second granny unit, that only lets us capture part of the value that these potentially can bring. The other part of that equation is they potentially help the affordability picture. Because in theory, if you have a rental unit on your property, typically it captures more than its share of the cost and makes the whole property more affordable from that perspective. And just to give you an example, when my wife and I first got married, we thought we were going to build our first house. We were silly. But we were going to live in the ADU to start with because we didn't need any more space than that, rent out the main house, and then switch as we needed the more space. And that would have been a way for us in a very expensive area that we were living in to find a way to get into housing. And so the request is simply to ask staff to look into this. to see what it would look like to expand out the ability for people to have an ADU with fewer restrictions, to come up with what would it look like and what kind of process and restrictions we would need to open that up to other areas. Now, that being said, and the motion would include this, certainly HOAs can prohibit or put further restrictions on. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it's blanket, that the whole county would be wide open. That's what happened over in California next to us. The state passed a law requiring ADUs in every jurisdiction, and that's been a pretty radical change. And so I think what we'd be looking at is something more measured and more well-studied and kind of moderate, but to really open up and add that into the list of tools that we have to help with housing affordability and housing availability.
All right, thank you, Vice Chairman. Commissioner Gilman, questions, comments?
None, thank you.
Austin, is there anything you wanted to add to this?
I think at this point, Austin Osborne, for the record, if you were to approve this, then we would embark on a journey with the Planning Commission to go across the county to the communities and feel folks out, see what they think, talk to folks that live in residential zones, and keep coming back to this board and the Planning Commission. I talked to Commissioner Mitchell about spending up to a year, developing this, and if this board ultimately wants to go this direction with the Planning Commission and start writing the regulations. I've talked to Planning Manager Canfield. She has put in her tentative budget with Jennifer enough money to get professional services to write up an ADU ordinance that would not just allow the use, but make sure it has all of the nuances and things that good ADU ordinances might have.
Great. All right, I don't have any questions. Is there any public comment at this time? Not seeing any. Would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I move to direct county staff to, sorry, give me just a second. I move to approve county staff to draft regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units in all residential, commercial residential, estate, and planned unit development zones except where prohibited by existing HOA regulations in Storey County, including conducting countywide public surveys, scoping, and community workshops, seeking further direction from the Board and Planning Commission, and including sufficient funds in the fiscal year 26 county budget to complete necessary drafting of consultation for associated regulations and codes.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Austin. Moving on to item number 28, discussion for possible action. I'll let you kick this off. I'll let you read the whole thing.
Sure.
You tied me up last time, so you're good.
This one, Austin Osborne, for the record, is update discussion and provide direction to county staff and lobbyists regarding upcoming bills and legislation affecting Storey County, including but not limited to the following: SB 69, Storey County's bill adjusting tax abatement programming, Senate bills regarding regional planning for Storey, Washoe, Lyon, Carson, Douglas, and the cities, i.e. Skip Daly. Senate Bill 78 is potentially related to the Comstock Historic District Commission. AB 77, tax abatements. AB 32, V&T Railway, and bills and resolutions supported by Nevada Association of Counties, unless otherwise directed by the board. With me here today, of course, is Will Adler from Storey State Government Relations, Helen Foley with Foley Public Affairs. We are working as a team on all of the bills in the legislature potentially affecting the county, as well as the big one that we're working on, Senate Bill 69. If you like, Mr. Chair, I can just go over some of the simple stuff first, and then we can get into a more comprehensive discussion on the county's bill.
That'd be great.
All right, and at this point, then, if Helen and Will at any time want to come up and fill in or discuss, this might be the time before we get into our big bill. Just as a reiteration from the last county commission meeting, our team has been following all the Nevada Association of County bills, pretty much going along with them. If we see anything that is out of the ordinary that this board might want to take action on or that we need to research a little bit further, we do. We don't see anything at this point that necessitates major board direction with regard to NACO bills. There's AB 32, Commissioner Mitchell being on the V&T Railway Commission. I ask if you have anything you would like to talk about with that bill.
No, there's no real update. That's Carson City's bill. We're in support, and we're working through the process. So if there's something to update, I'll let the team know.
Okay. AB 77 regarding tax abatements and other tax abatement bills that might end up getting kind of wrapped up in a discussion with 69 because they're kind of all related to tax abatements and probably will come out in the conversation. At this point, there's no other things other than SB 78. There's no activity occurring in that bill that would affect potentially the Comstock Historic District. We don't know if that bill overall will be making it or not. It's doing what bills do in Carson City. As far as Senate Bill 69 goes, I'll give an introduction of kind of where we are at that bill, and then, oh, yes, so general comment, come on up. Yes.
Hello, Will Adler for the record with Silver State Government Relations. Just process-wise, yesterday was the deadline day for bill introductions to the legislature. We did get a bit of a glut of bills coming into the legislature, but in particular, a few of them did catch our eye. SB 373, which is introduced by Senator Steinbeck. It establishes requirements for regional business licenses, so it is applicable more to Clark County, it looks like today, but made the list of things to bring up. And SB 315, that authorizes the Department of Transportation to enter into progressive design build contracts for certain projects. So again, has sort of regional implications when it comes to design build. It actually implies it can go cross county lines and things like that. But there's a glut of bills that were introduced, kind of deadline days do that to us. They get them done by the deadline. So we're reviewing those bills, and we'll keep adding to the list as appropriate from here, but flagging those two for now. And Helen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Commission, Helen Foley with Foley Public Affairs. Just to talk about a couple of other bills before we get into the SB 69. Assembly Bill 61 is that toll road bill, and it was requested by the City of Sparks and the Mayor of Sparks. There was a hearing on the 25th of February. Nothing yet has happened with that, but we are watching it carefully. There is another bill that deals with transferable tax credits and abatements, and it was requested by Assemblywoman Erica Mosca, Assembly Bill 226. It had a hearing on the 11th of March. What it does is it demands for the higher priced tax abatement bills to have a community benefits plan so that a community, whether it's here or Clark County or anywhere, would have to show what kind of benefits that new business would bring to the community and what they plan on doing to enhance the livability of the community. It could have some effects on 69 and that whole issue, so we'll be watching that. With AB 77, it's a GO-ED bill. It involves, it hasn't had a hearing yet, hasn't been posted for hearing. I think that some of the people working on 69, and will explain this a little further, are trying to integrate some of the parts of AB 77 into 69. It would help rural communities with health care issues and provide them with more benefits. The other thing that it wants to do, when the tax abatement bill was first created, or the whole concept 10 years ago, they wanted a lot of exports from Nevada to out of state to be part of those abatements. Now they're looking at that and thinking, well, maybe if there was a great need in the state of Nevada to provide services, to provide manufacturing goods and services, that maybe you wouldn't have to have exports as much as you do. So they talk about an import substitution job. Then there's another bill that deals with school districts. I know it's not directly related to you, but they say that the fund to assist rural school districts in financing capital improvement projects, that if those funds are not used annually, they now go back to the general fund. This is saying, AB 355, please let us keep those in that fund for those, especially rural areas, to use that for capital improvements in their school districts. There's a surcharge bill that deals with the 911 system. Steinbeck and Stone have introduced it. There's a hearing tomorrow. That is SB 208. What that does is that it's supposed to be all of the telecommunications companies pay into the 911 system, and it is for those services, for the operating systems. Well, Steinbeck and Stone want to be able to build buildings up to $15 million with those funds, specifically in Clark County. Not sure how that's going to go, but you should know about that. They also want to eliminate the money that goes into body cam systems for the police. Don't know how that's going to work. That was added a couple of years ago by Aaron Ford when he was majority leader. And that's basically it.
Thank you.
Commissioners Austin Osborne, for the record, before we get into SB 69, I ask if there's any elected officials, thank you, or county staff that have anything they've been monitoring, such as body cam footage, for example, you brought up, Ms. Foley. Okay, then we'll go ahead and begin.
If I may, the reference to the body cam, was that as part of the 911 funding bill, or is that a separate issue? A change to the way the 911 funding could be, or the surcharge could be used?
Thank you. For the record, Helen Foley. Commissioner, the original intent of that bill was to build out 911 systems. And Senator Ford at the time decided he wanted to use it for body cams. The FCC does not allow that, but he wanted it, and several of the counties are using it for body cams. We do not get any additional grants from the FCC because we violate the federal mandate on that. And it is only New York and New Jersey that also violate that, using it for other purposes. So in the bill, they are attempting to remove that so that we can get funding. When I spoke with Senator Steinbeck, he was saying maybe he would withdraw that amendment, but I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board before
Anything?
going to the next step?
Okay.
No, I think we're good.
All right. Austin Osborne, for the record. Again, we have our folks up here with us with government relations to discuss this bill, and we would like to have today just a little summary of where Senate Bill 69 is currently, where it's been, where it might end up, and then have some discussion with everyone about what do we want to do as far as the next steps in whether it's amendments or just proceeding forward, et cetera. So just as a background, we had a hearing at the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development on March 6th. Myself, Commissioner Carmona, and Will Adler, and also our Fire Chief, Jeremy Lonkar, were present at this meeting giving a presentation about the bill to the committee. We also provided to them a conceptual amendment of the bill, and what that showed is really the maintenance of our three main pillars of Senate Bill 69, meaning that the county and the fire district come to the table at the $3.5 and $1.0 billion tax abatement category applications with the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and that there is a mandatory government services agreement by which we can negotiate a contract to offset the county's costs during the 10 years of property tax abatement period. We had also included in that conceptual amendment a removal of all the data center elements of the bill as we're finding them to be able to be worked on administratively with the state or otherwise, because it is just an auditing element, and then also removing the county's request to be on the board of GOED during these applications. That is a conceptual amendment at this time. It is not an actual amendment until I understand it gets submitted to LCB, and Mr. Adler and his team are prepared to do that following what direction we get today from the County Commission. We had also highlighted in that conceptual amendment the area of retroactivity of those abatements, letting the board know that we want to continue discussing this with the Governor's Office of Economic Development and others, as there may be some better ways to address the retroactive time that these abatements become effective when they're approved. Senator Giannate, who was chairing the commission at the time, invited us in his office to discuss the bill. He had some concerns about Section 4 and Section 8 that really address the information that's provided to the county for the reference to tax credits. And we're finding that a lot of that information that we would be told is related to state category abatements and really not county. And in the essence of keeping it simple and also kind of understanding the concerns that the senators bring into us, we might ask this board today to consider waiving Section 4 or Section 8 or working with Giannate's staff to maybe come up with a better way of wording those or eliminating them. There was some support and there was opposition for our bill at the hearing. Generally, the Senate committee had very good questions, and a lot of them. Generally, it felt like the Senate committee was in support of or going along with in support of the idea of this bill. I don't want to put words in one's mouth saying that they're supporting it because a vote had not happened yet. There was I guess you call it the leader of the Professional Firefighters of Nevada Association for the fire districts coming from Clark County was present. He expressed a substantial amount of testimony in support of this bill, especially being that we're bringing fire districts to the table for the first time in Nevada under these to be considered. There was some opposition as well. There was some opposition kind of related to the data element of the bill, and some of the folks that gave that opposition said, even though you have a conceptual bill amendment submitted, it's still not technically amended. And they had said it afterward, it's like, we like the idea of Senate Bill 69, but we have to oppose because of the data center element until it's officially removed. At that point, they expressed they would be in support of or neutral on 69. Those were unofficial comments, of course. There was also some other general opposition to the bill. There were some that seemed to be pretty pointed on. They just didn't like the bill. And there was some opposition that, in my opinion, felt like they maybe had not understood the entirety of the bill and that they were believing that the bill we're proposing would affect all abatement categories. There was substantial comment from Clark County, for example. It says this would change how many companies we're bringing to Clark County or Las Vegas, and it wouldn't actually, because the only companies that have been tested in these waters are those that are located in Storey County, for example. Nevertheless, there's still opportunity to discuss these matters. There's some discussion at this point during the meeting as well as after the meeting on how do we get this bill to continue on. It seems like it's very strong in the Senate and that it might actually make it through the Senate, but we also have to look at the Assembly. We also have to look at the Governor's office. And in this, we want to talk about, are there some areas that maybe we could create some compromise on with the different groups to try to get the bill a little bit stronger and make it to meet the intent that other folks may need. Some of these items are, I think, at least our opinion as staff and lobbyists, is that the three pillars of the Mandatory Government Services Agreement and Storey County and fire districts being on the table are the three main legs of the school that we want to maintain. But there could be some discussion on, for example, the retroactivity of those applications, that maybe that could be made to the time of receipt, which it is currently, or approved, which the bill is currently, or maybe to no past the following fiscal year of the county, or get rid of that item altogether, that some have suggested would be good because it simplifies the bill and makes it a little bit more palatable. I'd like to discuss that with our team here today and see where we want to go. The Government Services Agreement mandate, we would like to talk about what are the most important parts of that if we are to maybe talk about today some flexibility in that area. I think we have heard so far that Storey County being treated as a stakeholder at the GOED board and the GOED process of approving the 1.0 and 3.5s, that there's some kind of binding power that Storey County has to ensure that its needs are met, and perhaps that a application to go ahead does not proceed out the door until Storey County is satisfied that its needs are met, and then maybe having some compromise to show that we're not getting anything out of this. We're just offsetting our costs during that abatement period, and that these are really the cost of whether it's a fire station or staffing or equipment or vehicles, as opposed to we're making it up. We don't believe that's really happening currently, but there's some talk on the other side saying, would you come to the table and talk with us about making sure that both sides can be met? Kind of a yin and yang, I guess you would say. Can we come up with some kind of a compromise? There's no crystal ball sitting up here with me or any of us, so I think what is most appropriate is that we have an engaging discussion with this board to get direction. Where would you like us to go? Continue holding strong on everything and not moving at all? Or maybe budging a little bit on some of these 3 columns, or maybe the GSA column? And we believe at this point the board is still giving direction to remove data centers, remove that board member, and then potentially to remove the retroactive part, and potentially to remove section 4 and 8 with discussion with Donate staff, Senator Donate staff. That's all I have. I don't know if Will or Helen, you have anything you'd like to add to this? Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Helen Foley. Before you get into that discussion, I think it's important to note that NACO got up and supported the legislation, as well as County Commissioner from Clark County, Marilyn Kirkpatrick. And that was extremely important because they can see the benefits for all counties in allowing the counties that might end up with $1 billion or $3 billion project an opportunity to know how that is going to affect their counties. So we do have some strong support, and moving forward, we'll be able to seek their support as well.
Will Adler, for the record. Helen Foley and Austin Osborne did an amazing summation of what's going on with SB 69. Just some brief, overview or comments. Again, we have some time to work on the bill, but the first committee passage deadline is April 11th, so we have to kind of leave this committee that we're in by April 11th. But speaking with the current manager of the committee, Fabian Donate, Senator Donate is running the Senate Revenue Committee while Senator Neal is not in the building. He said, he was very comfortable with the bill hearing we heard. We had a great presentation, and that he just wanted to guarantee that we're going to work with his legal team, as they had directly addressed questions to us around sections 4 and 8 of the bill, just as there are unintended consequences with opening up counties to that level of information sharing. We'd actually end up probably receiving all the information on all the licensed gaming properties and all their communications with the Gaming Control Board. Unintended consequence of how it was drafted, but as we said, we're willing to move that around or actually take that out of the bill in its entirety. But at this time, we could look to see a workshop or a work session, as we chose to ask for one, as was directed to me. So we can even assemble a document as of the end of this week and ask for a hearing the next week. So this is a live target and sort of a moving thing in the building, but it is ours to move kind of as we're ready. But around April 11th is the deadline, but usually the sooner the better, so we don't get jammed up in the mix at the end there. So that's all. And generally, I'd love to hear opinions around how the conceptual amendment was heard and where we should go from here. But I'm here to take your direction. Thank you, guys.
Do you have anything to add at this point, Austin?
Not at this time. Thank you. Look forward to your thoughts.
All right. I'm going to break protocol here, and I'm just going to tell you where I'm at. So I am pretty comfortable in removing items 4 and 8. And as far as I'm concerned, I would like to see SB 69 remain intact as a bill, obviously with modifications. The one thing I would like to touch on is that I am comfortable with the team working with GoEd to try to come up with some language that they're agreeable to. But it's important for me that the spirit of our bill stays the same. And so I think with some modifications, I think we can continue to have a strong bill. It's all over the news throughout the region, so it's definitely getting talked about in a good way. So again, for me, those are the 2 points that I'd like to, I think it's important that we keep pushing forward with our bill, and that I'm comfortable if we were to, set up a meeting with GoEd to try to get them some language that they're comfortable with, in addition to removing those 2 sections of that bill. So with that, I'll go to Commissioner Gilman if you have anything to add at this time. If not, I can
thank you.
move on. Vice Chairman, do you have anything to add at this point?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts, and maybe we can go one by, you touched on a couple of them, maybe we go through a couple of the others, just to make sure that our direction of the team is clear.
Yep.
I just want to kind of reaffirm that we're comfortable removing section 1, which is the data center section, from the bill. That was in our conceptual amendment, but I want to kind of solidify that. If we're going to move on in the process, we got to move from a conceptual amendment to an actual amendment that we can stand by. So is there consensus on that? That we're okay bringing that out? And then just, you kind of said it, but just same thing on sections 4 and 8. I'm happy to delve into a little more of what exactly those talked about. Frankly, I don't know if it was us that put those in or if it was something that LCB put in there thinking they were helping us. But basically, it would have given us information about credits that we didn't have anything to do with at the state level, and that got a little complicated. And there's maybe a reason we would need some of that information, but it looks like there are other ways we could get that if we needed it. And so I'm comfortable fully removing both of those sections. To me, that's a positive move towards making it acceptable to the largest number of people.
All 3 sections or 2? So 1, 4, and 8?
Yeah, I've moved on from 1. We're done with that. So
just making sure.
Yeah, so I just wanted to confirm that we're good on removing 4 and 8 as well.
Yes.
I think it would be helpful to get very specific on where we're at with retroactivity or when the effective date of abatements could be. As County Manager Osborne mentioned, the current situation is they can make them retroactive all the way back to when they first started the process. What we included in our bill was asking that they don't become effective till they're approved by the board, which sometimes could be almost a full year after they've started the process. The concern that has been expressed about that is GoEd wants companies to come here and start spending money and building while they're going through the abatement process. So they don't want them to have to wait to start their projects until everything's buttoned up, signed, and done. And so that's what we've seen. For example, Tesla started building their second factory well before, it was almost a year. They started in April, it was March 2nd by the time it was heard and approved by the GoEd board. If our bill as written right now was in place, they would likely have not spent any money through 11 months as they waited to make sure that they got the abatement that they were expecting. So I understand that I certainly don't want us to stand in the way of that development starting and getting moving in that direction. The specific defined problem or challenge that we have is going back into a previous fiscal year. Now, I've had fairly recent conversations with people from GoEd and others, and they said, well, if you're read in early in the process, meaning we're notified very early, within 15 days of an application starting, and that's not us, that's someone that we designate, so county manager under NDA, does that not take away some of that unforeseen where you can plan a little bit for what's coming so that even if it's retroactive, you're not jammed up, right? So in the case of this second Tesla factory, it was approved in March, but then we had to go back into a previous fiscal year and refund some taxes that had been paid in a previous fiscal year that we'd already closed out because they were able to elect to make it effective way back when. So I'm not strongly in support of keeping the wording that we have in there. To me, that feels very restrictive. I feel like if we back it up to say we don't go into a previous fiscal year, that takes care of the hardest problem for us, which is opening back up the books from a year we've already closed. I don't know if that's going to be acceptable to economic developers. They may say that still puts an arbitrary time frame where they're not going to be able to start building until we get past that point. To me, that seems like a decent compromise, but I'd love to hear what the two of you have to think about when abatements can become, on the 1 and 3.5 billion can become effective.
Commissioner Gilman, do you have anything at this time or no?
You know, the going retroactive is just complicated to me, and I'm not sure that I mean, may upset some companies and things like that. I don't know what ramification that has, so I guess that'd be the only question I would have there.
Well, so the current situation is that they can go retroactive. What I mean by that is they get to choose, do we want it to be effective from when we first started the process or any time after that up to, I think, a year later if they want to. But most of these companies, time is of the essence. They want to get it going and they don't want to wait. And so if we ask for a limit on going retroactive, that would only apply to the 1 and 3.5 billion because that's all our bill applies to, which means all of the off-the-shelf abatements could still go all the way back to when they started. So I'll give you a couple of examples because I've been trying to think this through and what the actual impact would be, right? If a company started an application in August, right? As long as it got done by July 1st, they could go retroactive to the beginning of the application. If they started in June or May, it's not that much that they're missing out on, or maybe they don't start moving dirt or whatever until after July 1st. It doesn't really delay their progress a whole lot. But if it's December that they start the process and they can't get it done by June 30th, potentially then they would miss out on, and so realizing that, miss out on a big chunk of time that they wouldn't be able, they either wouldn't be spending money or wouldn't be abated. GoEd typically only meets quarterly, and so that's one of the challenges is they don't meet that often, so they don't have the ability to get something done on shorter notice. I don't know if that's a good reason for us to say, well, we'll scramble and undo everything that we've done and have to, pull out the books and take that on as I mean, we're not the ones that are deciding to give out these abatements. They're being put on us. We're required to acknowledge them. And then to say, well, it's your responsibility to deal with the fallout doesn't seem like good partnership to me. But to me, a reasonable compromise seems like as long as we don't have to go back to the previous year, or if we think that that's going to make it a hot button and we want to really get through 2 or 3 of the things as opposed to 4 of the things, and we say we can take that one out and leave it the way it is and deal with the hassle of having to deal with, going back to a previous year, then that's something we can do as well.
Comptroller McCain, you look like you want to tell us a bunch of stuff. Do you mind coming up? Please. So how big of an impact is it for you to go back and...
You knew that was going to happen, right?
Yep. I was going to call a break instead, but the bell's fine.
I'm going to invite everybody over to my office to hear it.
Well, just for the record, I was listening to one of our meetings on YouTube when it went off, and you couldn't hear a thing. So
You couldn't hear it? Oh,
no.
You couldn't hear it?
No, you couldn't hear a thing. You couldn't hear it at all. It's blocked out by, or maybe it was on Zoom. I don't remember. Maybe I was connected on Zoom, but Zoom did a good job. You couldn't hear the siren at all. I could hear the chairman snide comments.
Those are always made loud.
under his breath, under the microphone, so.
Are you asking the difficulties in going back
Yes.
fiscal year? So we apportion our tax payments every quarter. At the end of the fiscal year, we have 2 months to catch up with the state and accept payments for the previous year. With that being said, once our books are closed, those taxes are apportioned to not just different departments within Storey County. We've paid the school, we've paid the state, and depending on if they're in other districts, such as the TIA pipeline district, all that money is already distributed. Now, for Storey County to go back and have to refund those taxes, we need to go back to the state, go back to the TIA payments that went out, and everything needs to be recalculated accordingly. So it can be cumbersome, especially depending on the amount of taxes that were received, and if it is only one fiscal year, sometimes the way we look at things, it might not be one fiscal year, depending on the timing. Could be two.
Okay, thank you for that. So to answer your question, Vice Chairman, unless for some reason this is a major issue for GoEd, I'd like to definitely put a time frame to not go back into the previous year. I mean, I don't, you know, we're talking about how many companies here? 3, 2?
So far, 3.
So far, 3,
Yeah.
okay. So, I mean, I know there's an incentive for the company, but maybe that should be incentive for them to hurry up with the process, the approval process? I don't know, I'm not.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think the problem comes when you go to other counties that take 2 years to give you a grading permit, you know what I mean? Like, so, but, I mean, as far as this discussion goes, I don't think we should let them go back to a year that's already closed, in my opinion.
Can I add one more thing? Sorry, into your discussion while you're throwing this around. It's also really important to...
Jennifer McCain, for the record.
Jennifer McCain, Storey County Comptroller. We build our budgets also on the amount of money that we received in prior fiscal year. So if we're already in the process we're in right now, planning our projects and where we're going to spend our money, if all of a sudden GoEd says, well, you give them $1 million back, that could throw our budget into turmoil. And not just ours. We're not presenting this bill, from what I understand, just for Storey County. Smaller counties, it could throw them into a financial nightmare if something like that has to cross fiscal years. That's all I wanted to add.
Can I ask about one other aspect of it, and that has to do with audits? You know, if we have to unwind a previous fiscal year and we're fairly well into the next year, is it possible that we're down the road on an audit that then has to be rolled back? Is there additional complication from that perspective?
Depending on how it's determined the best route to take to refund that money, it could possibly be a prior period adjustment, or we take care of it in the current fiscal year, and then our tax revenue is less in that current fiscal year.
Okay. I have one other question kind of along these lines, and that is, if we are notified early on and know that it's coming, are there things that we can do to account for, because they have some restrictions on how long they can take to approve. It's a 1-year time frame. So, yeah. Sorry.
Hey Karen, if you don't know your camera's on, did you want to speak, or did that just turn on by accident? Want me to turn it off?
That's
Karen?
okay.
I'm terribly sorry
No,
about that.
it's quite all right. Quite all right. So I'm just trying to understand if, you know, if early notification happens, if someone on our team knows at the very beginning, and there's a reasonable expectation that it's going to be closed in a year's time, and we have kind of rough ideas of amounts or numbers, does that mitigate the disruption? Do we have tools at our disposal that would allow us to better handle something like that coming towards us?
I would say yes. If we know ahead of time that Company A has a possible abatement coming through and there's a chance that a refund might happen, we can set that money aside in a liability account, basically a holding account, until all these decisions are made. And if that refund needs to happen, then we would simply send the money back to them. Not simply, but the money would be refunded to them. If there's no need for the refund, we can apportion it at that time.
Great, thank you.
May I ask a question on that?
Sure, more the merrier.
More the merrier. Jim Hindle, clerk and treasurer on this. If we put it into a holding fund, can we legally not apportion it or distribute it to the other tax entities?
That would be your question.
That would be my question, okay. I'm not sure that once we collect the taxes, that we can just hold it until the abatement issue is resolved. I think we have to distribute it to school district, fire protection district. And so that's where Jennifer highlights that complexity, is once the abatement hits and we have to rebate, all of a sudden we're pulling it from these other tax entities who probably have committed it.
Right.
And it's in our forecasted pro forma and budget with the tax, Nevada tax, that is expecting us or tracking us to say, what are you collecting, and then what are you distributing, and why aren't you distributing this money as planned?
So can I ask, Comptroller McCain mentioned that we work in some cases on a quarter-by-quarter basis. Is there a difference in the complexity going into a previous year versus having to go back 3 quarters in the same year?
If we have to go back 3 quarters in the same year, then that 4th quarter's apportionment will show those changes and those refunds made, and we would still close out the year with everything is status quo. I think it's also important that it depends on how these abatements are agreed upon. For example, with Tesla, the state still got a portion of their money, the schools still get their money, but it's...
Unless there's a reason, I'm not for that. Definitely not going back into the previous year.
I agree, I don't support that either.
Okay.
Commissioners, if I may, I want to bring in Assessor Seddon, because one of the things that has impact on this to me is also when the reassessment is done, what is the timing from the point of them envisioning a project to the point where it gets reassessed and we start collecting more than just the real estate tax, because many times it's the improvements that really jump up the amount that's collected. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that.
Janice Seddon for the record, Storey County Assessor. I'm just going to kind of give you like a breakdown and a timeline. So let's just say we receive a letter from GoEd that says, hey, this company has applied and we're working. Say it comes in March. Say it comes in March of this year, okay? Or let's say March of last year. It comes in, they make the execution date as the application date, because GoEd can basically choose when and what dates they want to make these abatements executed dates. And they'll say it's executed from, let's say March 15th of 2024, but that's when it started, because that's when they're out there moving dirt and when they're building, but it's got to go through this whole approval process, right? Well, now they're out there moving dirt, and we've changed the land value, and it's gone up because of dirt. Maybe they've actually built something out there because they have building permits. It's highly possible. So we're out there, and this is in March when all this is happening. We're out there in May and June picking up new land values, anything that's been changed, any buildings that have been built. GoEd is still in their approval process. We have now cut a bill as of July 1, okay? There's no abatement that's been executed yet. They are still in their approval, okay? So then they go on through, and then it could be, September, October, when they go back and, hey, this is now approved. Now, we have to go back into a previous year because that execution date is back to March, and we have to, we're gonna have to refund, because now I'm gonna have to go back and do a correction and apply this either 100% abatement, 75% abatement, and we're gonna have to do that. Now, depending on what's out there and how fast they're moving, all depends, honestly, on how big this abatement is. That's what we are trying to avoid. Sometimes we could be a whole year past and get into one, maybe two bills if it's a very crazy abatement. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes things get passed and I don't even know because I haven't received it, and we go ahead and bill, and then it's like, wait, what's going on with, we get a phone call going, hey, we have an abatement, and I'm like, you do, because things have fallen through the cracks. So we're all human, we all make mistakes, things fall through the crack. But this is one of the things that I think we're trying to avoid we can't do anything retro. If it's not, or I think that's what we're kind of looking at, we're trying to not make these things retro past a billed year. At least I don't think, I could be wrong in that. So, why should we have to go back? It's put in, it hasn't been approved just because they picked this date. To me, I'm just going to put this out there, why do we have to take the hit and have to jump through hoops when all the paperwork wasn't together and got approved prior to a billing? And I think do you guys have questions? Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say out there?
You've just firmed up my position, so thank you.
I have one question, and let's take your hypothetical example with it starts in March. If that land is ag deferred, could that moving of dirt trigger a recapture on that, and in essence jump up a big amount that's due?
Absolutely.
Coming right there, and so
yes.
And so it may not be just the value of the improvements that's added on to the bill, but it may also be potentially millions of dollars because they've been paying less than they otherwise would have, that's now triggered in, that would be in the mix and then have to be refunded if this abatement goes through.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, we're pretty good, or at least I try to have our finger on the pulse out there, but if stuff started happening in March, you only have till June 1st to put in like your new ag deferment stuff, or hey, I'm only going to do this amount. And if I see earth moving out on a parcel, guess what? I'm yanking it out of ag faster than, and we're going to do it. I'm going to be talking to somebody because, it gets too far down the line and then we've missed out on, or it just creates other issues. So that is a very good example.
Very good.
Any other questions?
I don't think so.
No, thank you. Thank you, that's helpful.
And if go ahead, Will, come on.
All right, sorry. While we're all up here. Will Adler for the record. So I have a question for you, maybe, sir. In the inverse of your scenario, where I do agree property taxes have a mandate under Nevada state law, because it's not, all the property taxes don't stay in the county of origin, right? So property tax actually really got a new mandate when it became the pure pupil funding formula, where the school districts don't keep the entirety of the property taxes, and it is almost immediately redistributed to this redistribution account for the state. So I agree with that, but is there a way that, just to play devil's advocate in the middle here, that I think today we see the value in keeping this language in the bill. We know that going past a fiscal year is unacceptable, but looking at the entirety of the bill, and if we are receiving information on an application as it's being processed with GoEd, or we have a prior year's information to speak with the company, I want to ask the fiscal team today, are there companies that today defer their current tax bill or don't pay in full, saying that I'm going to have an abatement approved down the road between quarters, or is that not a mechanism today as well? So just, if not, put it in the account and hold it, could we say you may owe us a larger bill later if your abatement isn't fulfilled by this date? Could be the inverse, but I think there's a lot of risk with the ag deferred land and other triggers that you might want to actually capture based on timeline. So just so we flush out the whole argument, maybe.
Assessor said, and for the record, our lien date is July 1, and if something has not been approved or has not been done by July 1, I'm not assessing it. So, I mean, that is, if you're like, hey, I've got an abatement, it's going to be approved, so sorry, I don't have the paperwork. I will call GoEd and go, hey, what's the deal? What's going on? Are we going to make this retroactive? Ever since we kind of got burned by that one company a couple of years ago, we try to stay on top of it. But otherwise, they're not getting an abatement if it's not approved. If I do not have approval, now a company can call me and say, hey, we're going to build out on this land. We haven't done it yet. I want to pull it out of ag deferment. We can do that, even if nothing has happened, because again, that's a change. I've been notified they want to change in use on the property, and that's going to happen before July 1. So we can do that even if nothing is being done on the property. But other than that, July 1 is our lien date, and that's our drop dead. So.
Are we firm on not going back to the previous year?
I think we're aligned on that.
Okay, I believe we are. Okay.
So let's say that's the case. I do want to at some point talk about kind of a proposed amendment that was sent that would be a radical departure. And I don't know if now's the right time to do that, or because I think if we go, hey, you know, that we don't really have an interest in that, or we do have an interest in that, they may change. I mean, we're through most of the things in the bill. I think the big one is just I don't have any desire to budge on the fire districts being included. I don't think there's a lot of resistance to that. Yeah. So I don't think that's a point that we need to really debate. I think we're in on that piece. I think the mandatory GSA is a big conversation for us, but maybe before we dive, and to me that's the last one, right? Like, we've touched on all the other pieces of the bill. Is there anything else hanging out there?
Well, let me clarify my statement, because what I should have said is either we need to ensure that there is a GSA in there or something of the like to ensure that Storey County is not left out to dry, or any other county that may be facing this issue. So it doesn't have to be a GSA as far as I'm concerned. If there's some other mechanism to do it, we're still keeping the spirit of our bill intact, and whether it's a GSA or something else, I think that's acceptable. If the GSA is a hang-up, and there's another method to make sure that our needs are addressed, or any other county that's in this situation, then I would feel comfortable with that as far as an option.
I mean, if we want to dive into the conversation around the GSA, I mean, the counterpoint that will be said is, look, the reason you are in this situation of not having protection is because of the developer agreement. Because the developer agreement makes basically everything an over-the-counter approval. It's not you don't have these projects going through the planning commission who could condition approval on X, Y, and Z that you need. And so anyone else who doesn't have that kind of a setup, they're covered because they can get the things they need through their normal planning process.
Correct.
And so basically they're saying that sounds like a you problem. Now, I think we've shown it's not just us. There's some jurisdictions that are even less sophisticated than we are from a perspective of they may not even have planning, zoning. I mean, they're simple, right, as far as how they do things. And so it's not just an us problem, but I think that's the counterpoint is why would you put a drag on statewide economic development when it's really something that you've put into place that has caused you not to have the protections or get the things you need through a planning process?
Well, the reality is we're in this situation because we're the easiest county to get business done in. Mm-hmm. We're the only county, as far as I'm concerned, that has ever had to deal with this. So if they're not seeing that, I don't know what else to tell them.
Yeah, and that is the response, right? It's like these aren't happening anywhere else, so maybe the way that everyone else is doing it isn't working.
Or these companies come to Storey County for a reason.
Right.
Right? And that developer agreement is obviously one of the major reasons, but nobody thought about it. There's no safeguards for Storey County. And let I remind everybody that we went through this with another company out at the park where they didn't like what we were offering and they just decided to pull back on their abatement package. And then Storey County's a bad guy.
Right. So, and I made that point in a recent conversation with some proponents or opponents, whatever, and their response was they would like to move everyone else closer to what we do, whether that's, so maybe the state has to come up with an infrastructure fund to do what Roger Norman did for us, right? To front load that infrastructure so it doesn't become an investment for the company. But if we put this into place, it will shut the door on their ability to do that, because we're reasonable when it comes to the way that we negotiate on these things. Not everyone's as reasonable as we are, and other jurisdictions will have the power to kill the bill through this GSA, kill the project through this GSA process.
May I add to this, Austin Osborne, for the record, a couple things on that. I just want to remind us, when we did the most recent tax abatement for 3.5, you remember the complexity of that. We had to create an economic diversification district. That took months. You know, I mean, it wasn't just draw a line and then decide what you're going to do with fire trucks and, you know, and sheriff's vehicles in it. It took months to go through all the details and determine what's going to be in and what's going to be out and how that's going to affect the company and how it's going to affect the county. And then after that, then you start discussing all the vehicles and staffing and all these other things. I will say that GoEd, their staff and their team were very helpful through that process, but they haven't actually gone through the negotiations of a gigafactory like we have 4 times. We did it with the Gigafactory 1 twice because there was a 2021 update, which is a major update. It was $7 million if I remember. The Gigafactory 2, and then of course there was the Redwood Gigafactory. And the point of that is just to have it generalized where it kind of goes to a board and they look at some things and say, is the county going to be happy? You guys got this and that, good. And then the company, are you guys happy? Good. It isn't that simple. You know, Attorney Brown was there with us in all of these things, and we needed him by our side the whole time because these things got very, very complicated. The assessor's office with Seddon going through meets and bounds of buildings and parcels and determining what's in and out when you look inside a huge building, and having to look at floor plans and then compare the floor plans to aerial photography and then determine where those areas are that are kind of in and out of this district. You know, these are the kinds of things that took incredible amount of time and expertise and experience. I don't think this is something as simple as just handing it over to GoEd, for example. I'm not putting them down. They're a fine group and they're very qualified in what they do, but they haven't done this level on this side of the discussions on these abatements. And I think it's important, whatever this board does, whether we go back and discuss and try to come up with some middle ground on the government services agreement, or we just go with what we have, that the county is not just a participant in a conversation. It isn't just a coordinated agency. Nothing can move forward until the county has its needs met. That's very important. And you're right, both commissioners, this isn't just a Storey County problem. This is a Nevada-wide problem. This is potentially a Reno problem in an airport district. They didn't make that happen. You know, this is for all of us. It isn't just for Storey County. Nevertheless, we have to deal with it. So I see the needs on both sides. There's no doubt. I think that's got to be important that this board, whatever we do, that there is teeth with Storey County to be able to address its needs in this very complex environment, especially being the ones that know how to do it.
So we've talked a lot. I think I need to refocus as to what do we have open for discussion.
I think we've resolved on just about everything except for what do we do with GSAs or some way to protect ourselves and get what we need. I think pretty much everything we're aligned there. Now, the twist or the wrench that I'm going to throw in is to introduce or summarize this alternative amendment proposal, because I think it's worth discussing. It was put together with some considerable amount of discussion and work from both supporters and I guess opponents, different stakeholders in the bill, and so certainly I think it's worth considering. We may be able to say, sorry, it doesn't align with where we're at quickly, and then it goes off the table. So the idea was to basically get rid of everything out of the bill. And there would be very simple things in there. One is to codify into law that we get notified early, 15 days, within the first 15 days after the process starts, we are notified, and I believe fire district would be notified, everyone on the local level would be notified. So someone has to sign an NDA and all that stuff, but then we're in the process. And so that time that it takes to kind of work through and figure out and whatever, we're kind of going along with that process.
Okay.
The second piece of it then would be that GSAs would not be mandatory, but if we're not able to come to an agreement, then we could go to the board of GOED and say, they didn't play nice, we didn't get the things that we needed. GOED's going to be asking for the ability to say yay or nay to reduce abatements. That's in their AB 77, which is out there, and may appear in other places. And so they're asking for the ability to say up or down, and they're saying if a company doesn't play nice with you, doesn't enter into a GSA, you can come to the board when they're looking at approving an abatement and say, we really needed a firehouse to make this project work. They didn't pay, they wouldn't pay for any of the firehouse, and the board can say, we're going to reduce it from 100% to 95%. That gives you the $15 million you need for the firehouse, and that's what we're going to approve. Now, there are a lot of unknowns in this. We don't know if that change will come through. But basically what it does is it really simplifies down. It doesn't say anything about retroactivity. And so that's something that if we wanted to engage and counter, that's probably something we would want to add back in because it's not reflected. So I guess that's the question. The question is radical departure, much similar or much more streamlined. Really the concept behind it is early notification takes care of a lot of the problems we're facing because we know, we can plan, we can, you know, it doesn't have as much impact because it's not coming at us last minute. We have the ability to engage and to plan and be ready through the process much earlier, and so it makes our lives quite a bit easier, and it doesn't get in the way of them attracting companies, which is the assertion that's been made by the things that we're asking for. So I don't know if that's a direction we want to go, to entertain going that direction. You know, Chair Carmona, you've stated that your preference is to keep the bill, our bill intact and move forward with it.
I say our bill intact. I mean, I don't want SB 69 to disappear and it becomes AB 77 with some of our verbiage in there.
Right.
That's what I meant to say.
So I ask about that because they had talked about including that verbiage in our bill as part of that. I said, I don't know if we want to get involved in that. That's really not our, that's not our water to carry.
Yeah.
And they said, that's fine, we'll be introducing it through other vehicles. So if you don't want it in your bill, but they were trying to give us the picture of how it all worked together. Because if you don't have that piece, it looks like we're getting very little. There's no recourse if we don't get what we want, and the board can't turn down an application or change an application, then there's nothing we can do. You know, we're left high and dry. And so they said, look, if you don't want it in your bill, don't put it in your bill, that piece. But they're asking for a much simplified, real kind of bare bones. It also, if I remember correctly, only referenced the $1 billion, and for me, the 3.5 would have to be in there as well. And so if we were to counter, we'd want to add back in the things that we want to do. So it's really two tracks. Do we stick with our bill, make the adjustments, changes, modifications that we feel are reasonable and called for, or do we look at this, gut and replace, if you will, with a very simple, you'll get notified early, and whatever else we want to put back in. I don't know if there's value going that direction or not.
Okay. Well, I mean, we talked about the issues we need to remove from our bill, right? So therefore, the original bill is not going to be intact, right? We're removing 1, 4, and 8. as we talked, right?
Yeah.
Somebody agree with me so that I know
Yes.
I'm moving on the right track. And then on top of that, I think I was pretty clear as far as if it's not a GSA, I mean, if it's not a GSA, there's gotta be some other method for us to be whole.
All right.
And I don't know what direction to give people, but I'm just saying as a board, I think if we say if there's no GSA, then we have to come up with something that allows us to be whole, whatever method that is.
And just briefly, Will Adler for the record, if I could comment based on Commissioner Osborne's previous comments, the idea that the go-ahead board can reduce an abatement, an appropriate amount, it's supposed to be 100% abatement for $3.5 billion tax break, that they could see the need and the county could produce that prior to the meeting, they would reduce the tax abatement by 15%, 25%, whatever is appropriate, to get to a financial statement that would say, over time, you will pay for that fire station because revenue is coming in over the 10 years. But as the commissioner said, or county manager said prior, it took a lot to actually get down to the details and the nitty-gritty of what is the cost and what is the requirement and what is the map for where this is going to land, because we have to set up a whole district literally on a map where this does and does not apply for the property and the building that's being asked for in the 3.5 or the $1 billion abatement categories. But again, just the thought that GOED's board can sort of take a stance personally and even reject or deny an application that does desire to come to a county is a whole nother bag of worms that, as Commissioner Mitchell said, why would we carry that sort of language in this bill when that wasn't the initial intent? It wasn't to empower the board, really. It is to empower the county with information about, desired companies that wish to come here. So it is sort of my complaint would be the empowering away from the county rather, and relying on that new empowerment to then protect the county or, reduce the abatement was the proposal. But it is not a GSA protection. It's not a direct conversation. And I don't think it gives us that time the way the current draft of SB 69 would, to clarify the differences between the two. That's all.
Okay. Austin, did you have something to add?
I have something to add, Austin Osborne, and then I believe Cesar said wants to talk a little bit about that retroactive element again as well. I think on the government services agreement element is, this board potentially, I talked about earlier, could give direction, not with all the specificity, but could say, all right, we want a government services agreement to be mandatory, or kind of the equivalent of.
Did I just say that?
Maybe I didn't hear you all the way. Well,
Did anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, if we're fine with that, then it would be, we're a stakeholder, it's binding, and that application doesn't move forward until the county is satisfied with whatever the government services agreement will cover. Okay, if that's the case, then that's all I have to say on this.
No, you're fine. I thought that's what I stated, GSA or something of the like, to make sure that we're kept whole. I thought that was broad enough.
And binding. It is something that I can't take it as
Obviously,
advisory.
I'm sorry, I guess I'll include that, but I mean, why would I want to agree to something that's not binding? So being binding is obviously one of the criteria. Should we take a break? I'm almost there.
Yeah, let's. Yeah.
This is work, Jana.
It is, but these lovely abatement accounts got me jumping all over the place this time of year. So, Assessor Sadden for the record. This may sway or may not sway, kind of coming back to the let's don't make these execution dates retroactive. So the one thing that you have to think about is obviously their first couple of years while they're just getting things built, there's obviously not a full building out there. You don't have personal property out there. Those are going to be the years that have a much smaller abated tax. So it could be a plus if you're trying to say, hey, we want to leave this in here. We do not want anything retroactive. It is more beneficial for the company to start their abatement at a later date and go 10 years from there, because they're going to get more abated value pushing that back a year. Or you look at it and go, okay, we'll deal with the hassle of refunds because however the board wants to look at it. We'll deal with the hassle of going backwards and doing a refund on the smaller amount of an abatement than that 10th year when you're gonna get a full abatement of the whole building and everything else. Am I making sense there?
Yeah, to me, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a board decision. Do we want to do it a hassle and go it back, or just say, hey, it's a lot easier, it's gonna be more beneficial to the company to push this out and get a much later execution date because they're gonna have more abatement savings, you know, in that ninth and 10th year than they would be in the
needs to
first
be
and second.
educated of that fact, because if they're hanging on the retroactivity, then they need to understand that maybe it's more beneficial for the company not to go back in time, but to start the calendar a little later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it may be even more complex than that because in concept that's true, but by year 10 you've got depreciation into the mix and other things depending on how fast they build on the front end. Right now the company gets to pick, but you're absolutely right. There's an information education piece that needs to happen, I think, because there's an assumption that earlier is better, and that may not always be the case. Thank you. We can take a break. I think a bit more conversation around the GSA and what we want to do with that, and then we're done.
Okay, if that's where we're at, and we want to keep going, I'm fine.
I can comment to the GSA.
Sure.
Will Adler, Silver State Government Relations again. Just to put a finer point to all this conversation, hopefully, the government service agreements or the GSAs were kind of the core of the mission coming into the bill conversation as I understood it, because there is this desire to update the abatement process but not diminish it in any way. But the update does come from your own perspective and your own experience here at the Storey County level. And I think there's a lot of merit in saying our core is this GSA agreement and having the companies come to the table and speak to us about the impacts and how we can actually come to an agreement on mitigation of those impacts. So I think that was heard loudly and clearly in the bill hearing, and even was spoke to by Commissioner Kilpatrick, because that was literally an oversight in the initial bill was fire protection districts, right? It was actually spoken to public safety as a whole shall be taken into account with larger abatements for the $3.5 and $1 billion. But again, we fall into a niche of, the actual, regulations and ordinances on the ground here in Storey County. The district that is the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center is something we've learned from over the last 10 years. And that's where this experience wants to be applied in SB 69. So I do agree wholeheartedly with the mandate of holding to the GSAs and having the companies come to the table. I see merit in having maybe some change to the language as the amendment proposed, where information is just shared upon the beginning of the abatement process. I have some concerns on when is that beginning, and is there a trigger mechanism that's in regulation or law we can cite where if we weren't told when the beginning began, we could tell them, hey, we were left out. But tightening up some language about that is amenable. But yeah, I think holding to that core of the GSA is highly of value and is what this bill is here for. So I think this discussion has been very helpful, but knowing what other people's desires are, what other mechanisms they might recommend is good. But knowing that holding to the core of a GSA or something like it, or some agreement that brings people to discussion prior to the time when we need answers is what we can accomplish with 69. However, generally you want to give the direction, we're here to accomplish that. But I've heard, at least from this discussion, that the GSAs is kind of the purpose of the bill. And I think we can flourish by tightening around that and modifying the language. But I think that's the core we can go with. So that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I bring some context to that discussion? A lot of the testimony against centered on the fact that there are no parameters or guardrails, or in their words, because I don't necessarily agree 100% with that, as far as what could be asked for or included in a GSA. And I would say it's pretty clear in the statute that it's for full or partial recovery of costs for impacts that are directly from the project. So there is a parameter put around it, right? We know that we can't be asking for more to finance other projects that we want to do off the back of a project. But the scenario that's been brought up is, what if a local jurisdiction negotiating with a company who's required to negotiate a GSA asks for so much that it basically cancels out the benefit of getting the abatement?
Is that a question or a statement?
It's a question. Now, that's not been our experience, right? I feel like the company's gotten a pretty good deal in exchange for the things we've asked for, but maybe other jurisdictions aren't the same as us, and maybe they look at it as an opportunity to grab more. And so I think that's in an effort to try to make a bill that we can get the most support on, that'll get through the process, that won't be vetoed. I think at least some sort of conversation around it. We may go, you know what, it's worked fine. We've been able to work it out. And there's a safety valve that if you can't come to an agreement on a GSA, then it goes to the voter-approved taxes, which on the sales tax instead. And or does that go away? Does it become required? So now you have to negotiate a services agreement.
I don't think you're wrong on your observation. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and, there could be counties out there that are greedy and try to cause that problem, so I understand that. But I believe that's up to the people like us sitting in these chairs to make the best decision for their county, and if you don't like how it's going, vote somebody in there that you think can do a better job. So you can't control that, I think, and I apologize. I'm on cold medicine, so my mind is not working as well as it should. Right. But I understand the issue, and so thank you for bringing that up.
But also, it's up to the people sitting in the legislature. We're proposing what we think is the best solution, and if they think it should be something different, they can change it and pass something different. I don't know if it really falls to us to say, we're doing our best, but we truly think that if we truly think this is what's best for the entire state and what's going to balance, the number of things we've given up out of our initial bill, which would have been helpful, are significant. So I think it's hard for anyone to reasonably say that we're intransigent, that we're not willing to work. And so if that's the case, and we hold fast on this and say, this is what we need to make this work. And then it's up to the legislature. They are the lawmakers. And it's up to them to decide either to say, yeah, you have a point, or to say, oh, we've got other concerns, and that's up to them. We do our part, we present what we think is the best solution, and then we go.
I do have a point of clarification, Chair.
Sure.
Okay, Austin Osborne, for the record, it's important to remind ourselves, one of the reasons we have the mandatory GSA in the Senate bill is currently the 1.0 abatement has nothing. And then the second one for the 3.5, and I look to Brian, or Attorney Brown, make sure I say this right, because he helped navigate through some of this when we were negotiating these, is if we don't create an economic diversification district and a government services agreement is not agreed to, currently what happens is the abated company will pay a portion of sales tax dollars that are the voter approved and option types. In our case, what that would be is we would have a very flush tourism budget, a very flush V&T railway budget, and then we would have a infrastructure budget that's flush, which that might be okay, but we don't need the money in steam trains. We need it in cops and firefighters and those sorts of things. So that's one of the reasons we had the mandatory GSA, is to try to compel that we get the money in the places we need to respond to the needs of the new company.
Thank you. Well, and kind of to your point, Commissioner, I think it's a little bit offensive to assume that local jurisdictions would not want the economic development, would not work with the companies to try to bring the jobs and the economic development that's going to come with these projects. Government is often a balance of incentives, right? And we are incentivized to be pro-business and to, this is the stuff that everyone else wants in their counties. Apparently, we're taking advantage of all our neighbors by bringing it here. At least that's what I've been told. And so I think while it may make GOED's job a little more difficult, I think it's very reasonable for local jurisdictions to ask for what they need to be able to accommodate these projects.
Okay.
So then the question as a board is, do we hold firm on mandatory abatements for $1 billion to $3.5 billion? Is that our bill? We roll with it? Or do we look at some sort of softening, guardrails, optional, add optional to $1 billion like it is right now? Or do we just say, you know what, mandatory, if we're gonna keep doing these 100% abatements, you gotta negotiate with the local jurisdiction?
Yeah, to me, that's not an option. I mean, that's, you asked me a question, that's my answer. We have to be included in negotiations, and we need to be made whole.
So,
I don't know what else to say.
so what's the response that everyone else can cover themselves with their planning commission? You guys created this problem for yourselves. Because the argument then is, if it's only a Storey County problem, you don't fix it through statewide legislation. You do something different locally.
May I remind us to contribute to that question? If may, Austin Osborne, for the record, I think our statement has been consistently that Storey County has an issue, the city of Reno might have an issue, rural counties in a state may have an issue, and we talked about, you know, the staffing, the capacity, the structures in place, and the fact that a very small jurisdiction like Esmeralda County could get a gigafactory, because some of these counties have lithium. They've got the world's largest lithium mines. Maybe a gigafactory might want to co-locate there. I don't know, nobody's told me that, but we're thinking about those folks. And to have Esmeralda County, you know, develop the sophisticated zoning and building departments and staffing and having a county manager and somebody at Attorney Brown's capacity to negotiate things and put things together, that it's for those folks too. It was for all of us. And it could be a large jurisdiction. Reno's a large jurisdiction. They have a gigafactory that was landed for them in an airport district that we understand is abated forever. They may have want to be part of a discussion too.
Jennifer McCain, for the record. I think it's really important to note, and maybe an answer to your question is, we didn't know this was going to be an issue until we lived through it. And history shows us, if we go back to 2015, 16, 17, where we had to be very creative with how we budgeted and spent our money and funneled money to the sheriff's office or to the fire district instead of roads, to make sure that our citizens and these companies' employees were safe. Those were things we had to do because what was put on our plate. The GSA made that a little bit easier, but if we didn't have those GSAs, that would have been nearly impossible. And you talk about a company going into Esmeralda or Lincoln or any of these small counties, they don't know they're going to have a problem until they do. And we're trying to prevent them from having to learn the way we did.
Assessor Seddon, for the record. I work very closely and actually mentor two other small counties, Pershing County, Mineral County. Pershing County, they're already being hit with quite a few large businesses. I actually have gone up and done presentations at their commissions meetings and stuff like that, because they look at these and they don't even know. We're talking, for me now looking at it, it's not even the SB1s and the SB2s. It's like just abatements, a salmon farm or a data center, and it blows their mind. They don't understand like the ramifications. You take a county like Pershing, again, they have rail, they have cheap land, they have water, they have access to interstates. It is highly possible. I think a lot of people want to look at this and think, that's never going to happen in Esmeralda County, or it's not going to happen. We were lucky enough that when this hit, we kind of already had a system in place, even though it almost killed us. I was here when all this stuff happened. I was here prior to it. It literally almost bankrupted and killed Storey County, but we already had the industrial park in play and had a couple of big things going. So we already kind of knew how to work through that process. These other rural counties don't have that. It will kill these counties without a GSA in place. I feel every confidence that I could stand up and say that just from working with them for these small little companies. Again, they're not small companies, but compared to what we're dealing with out here in Storey County, like I said, these data centers, these salmon farms, and they're already just flustered, not knowing what to do with regular abatements. With these SB 1s and 2s and stuff that's coming in, it will kill these small counties if there is not a GSA in play.
I agree. So, I guess my question here is that we commissioners sitting here agree that there needs to be a GSA or something like that we would stand behind in our bill, correct? Like we're not wanting to give up our bill.
I don't.
And I don't either. And
Well, it don't matter. If you guys don't want it, we're good.
but we want something in there. If it's not the GSA, the way it's written now, it's something else. So do we need to come up with that language, or
No, I think
professionals that we?
I think we can direct staff, if other stakeholders want to come and suggest alternatives that accomplish the direction that we've set, we can give them the latitude to look at that, right?
I think we should do that.
Yeah. I think the direction of the board is clear. I mean, we can ask the team, but maybe ask for general public comment and put it to bed.
Is there public comment? So have we given you enough latitude but yet enough direction? Yes or no?
Austin Osborne, for the record, in response to that, and I look at our team to make sure, I'd like to go over the things to make sure we're aligned. And I think if we're aligned on that, we would be aligned with you.
I feel like Judge Judy. It's a yes or no answer.
Yes, I believe so.
Let's recap it.
All right, 15-day notice, I'm hearing concurrence. Section 4 and Section 8, we're removing that, okay? Senate Bill 69 in its innocence and spirits is to remain intact and be Senate Bill 69 as a Senate bill, as a county bill. Work with GOED and others on details with regard to the government services agreement mandate to make sure that it is a government services agreement or an equivalent that is binding and allows the county to ensure that that GOED application does not proceed forward in the application process without the county's concurrence, or city or fire district. I believe we're aligned on that. Okay? The data center auditing element, we're removing that, Section 1.
Retroactive.
No, yep, I'm reading it. There's no retroactivity of the abatement past the fiscal year. That would be July 1st. I'm hearing concurrence on that. Okay? Generally speaking, unless I'm missing something, team, I think those are all the elements and we're aligned and we can move forward and iron out a real amendment to the bill that's aligned with these things. There's still some flexibility for us to work with parties on that.
That works.
Sounds good.
Great. No public comment. Vice Chairman, are you prepared to make a motion?
I am. I'm just wondering if there's any other specific guides that need on any other bills, or if what we discussed is good and we're good to go.
I think that's the point. I think unless you two have anything really urgent, you went over the bills, we're comfortable at this point, that direction would remain the same.
Okay. Then I, Commissioner Mitchell, move to direct county staff and lobbyists to represent Storey County on known BDRs, bills, and other potential legislation affecting Storey County as discussed here on the record today.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Moving on to item number 29, which is discussion for possible action. Second reading of business licenses A through M. My commissioners have any, fellow commissioners have any questions? Not seeing any. Public comment? Not seeing any.
Oh, I have something.
You have something?
Just Austin Osborne, after everything we just endured, this stuff goes on behind the scenes as well, and I want to thank our team, our lobbyists, our internal team, our assessor's office. I could go on and on, I'm not going to do that, but we work very hard on this. I'm really appreciative for all the expertise they bring to the table, not only internally on our side, but helping us navigate through the territory down at the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. That was for public comment item number 30. We're on item number 29, which is second readings. Second readings. It's okay.
Public
Jump ahead.
comment on business licenses.
That was business related.
Vice Chairman, you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve the second reading of business licenses under item 29A through M.
I'll second.
Great. Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. On to item number 30. This would be the second and final time for public comment during this meeting. Is there any public comment outside of what he said? Not seeing any. It gives me great pleasure to say that this meeting is adjourned at 12:57.
Hey, my favorite.
You should have gotten an email with your budget in it. Do you have any questions?
I think